Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And this has been a very requested interview and somebody that I've been wanting to get on the channel for a long time. He is a creator of magic. He is a performer. His name was very closely associated with Davenports for many, many years. He's a super nice guy. I am, of course, talking about the one and only, the living legend himself, Dan Young. How you doing, Dan? You okay, mate?
I am perfectly fine, mate. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's a great pleasure to be on here, considering like the time we've had, and I've been watching like all of your videos up until this point. So it sort of kept me going throughout all of this as well. So it's a great pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, seriously, thank you. You know I'm a big fan of your material, and I always have been. And I remember when I did the interview with Lee Hathaway.
Yeah.
You just said to me, when are you going to get down on when are you going to get down on Talk Magic? I'm like, I would love to. I would love to. I'm such a fan of his. So I'm glad that we managed to make the schedules align and we managed to get you on here. So
Eventually, yes.
absolutely. And you know what? I use this expression with a couple of people, but I can't imagine that there's many other people that it actually applies to more than you. You're one of the best kept secrets in magic. And what I mean by that is there's going to be a lot of people that watch this because my viewing figures, a lot of people watch it from America and Canada and places like that. They might not necessarily know who you are.
No, I don't imagine so.
Yeah, because although you've released a lot of magic over the years and it's really, really good as well, it's never been kind of one of those things that you've put through Murphy's that's gone to every magic dealer around the world. So it's a kind of a case of, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you're missing out big time. So there's going to be some people that don't know who you are, and you have a huge legacy over here in the UK. But what I'd like to do, first of all, before we do anything, is give these people a bit of a frame of reference and just go back, and as I do in a lot of these interviews, talk about your origin story, who you are,
Sure.
and basically talk about your journey through magic. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
So, where did the bug bite? At what point did you kind of think, right, okay, this magic thing could work out really well for me?
I mean, it is, again, like, I mean, as so many other people have said, is sort of the standard one of starting when you were really young, and then sort of getting on with it there. I mean, I have some older brothers, and obviously older brothers always like to show that they are more clever than you. And so my older brother would show me some magic tricks that he knew. And that sort of got me sort of interested to some extent. Nothing too major at that point. But then I think one of my best friends back in school, he got like a magic set. He was born earlier in the year than me, and he was showing me some stuff. And then so when my birthday came around, then I wanted to sort of a magic kit as well. Got the magic kits. Also my uncle, he showed me like a couple of tricks as well. So that's sort of where I got sort of started initially. Getting that magic box. It's a standard thing with all the little crappy plastic bits and bobs. So I would have had that. Well, actually, no. Prior to that, I would have been in my grandmother's place, and she had some leftover magic set from my cousins who are older than me. And I found that magic kit as well. And I remember learning one trick, going downstairs, showing my parents and whoever else was sort of present, showing them the trick. They loved it. I would go upstairs, learn some other trick, go downstairs, that kind of thing, back and forth, running up and down the stairs, learning things. So that's really where it started, I guess, which is sort of similar to a lot of people, to be honest, but that's where we are.
But the difference is a lot of people learn magic as a kid, but then it just fades away and they end up not being, but obviously you took it further.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Was there a period of time during school where you were thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to step away from this magic thing, it's not really me anymore? Or were you always kind of in love with it, but you know?
I think I've always been in love with it more or less. I mean, I think we all have ups and downs. And I think there's important to sort of recognize that we're not always going to be 100% passionate about something. But yeah, like you said, like a lot of kids tend to go through that kind of phase. They get a magic kit because your parents or your relatives don't know what to get you for Christmas. You get a magic kit. Why not? That seems to be sort of a standard kind of gift at some point in someone's life. But I think I sort of expressed some sort of interest in magic prior to that. Then getting the magic kit, that just sort of kept it going. So I started doing that. I had a friend of mine that was doing it with me. We did some sort of show and tell is probably the wrong word, but whatever that is called in English. I mean, I'm not from here. I'm from Sweden. We call it different things, but doing it in school in front of the whole class, everyone loved it. So I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. I like this, and I wanted to sort of keep going with it. So I never really sort of fell out with it, because it was the thing that I was most sort of talented at. I was the kid that was picked last for the football team, or soccer if you're American. I was the last one picked for that, and it was like, oh, I like this kind of thing. This is weird and a little bit geeky, but you don't really think of it in those terms, I guess, when you are that young. And I sort of kind of kept with it, like, this is cool. All these secrets that I can have that no one else knows. And that sort of just kept me going really for a long time. Just that really.
Okay. And did you have like a goal in mind when you were learning all of this magic and doing the kind of the show and tell in school and showing your friends? And did you want to be a professional performer? Was that an ultimate goal for you, or was it just a hobby that you really enjoyed doing?
It certainly was. I mean, obviously at this point, obviously not a job or anything by any means. But it was something I dreamed about. Like I remember, like my parents had a summer house on an island, and it was this sort of, calling a holiday resort is a bit glamorous, but it was a small hotel on this island. And I used to go there sometimes when we were on the island. It's a bit of a trek. It's about an hour walk to get there, but I used to go there as a kid, and I always dreamt that, like, maybe when I grow up, I'll be performing here. I never did, but that was like in my mind. It was like, oh yeah, I want to do all those big illusions, all the David Copperfield stuff there at that particular hotel. It never materialized, but that was sort of the dream. And I never really had any more aspirations beyond that as such. I sort of fell into it a bit, I think.
Okay.
Because I was obviously doing magic, but then at any sort of family gathering, I will be performing magic. And maybe then there's like not direct family, but someone linked to the family, and it was their 40th birthday or something. And so then I would perform at that birthday, that kind of stuff. So I sort of kind of fell into it a bit, and just started performing a lot, like back in my hometown. Okay. But I mean, apart from that, I mean, I think it's important to note as well, which might tie into something in the future in this interview. But I also had a big love for the sort of the weird, mysterious, the occults, supernatural stuff, all of that kind of thing, like ghosts, psychic abilities and whatnot. And I remember reading about like people like Uri Geller, that kind of stuff in some books that I got into post. Because I remember it was a part of sort of a book club that like monthly they would send you a book. It was on different sort of supernatural topics. Mm-hmm. And like Uri Geller was mentioned in one of them. So that kind of stuff kind of got me interested in some of the weird mental things. I didn't make the connection with that to magic at this point. They were two completely separate things. But through that sort of book club, I think 1 month you got sent a tarot deck with a book. Wow. And taught how to read the tarot. I mean, bearing in mind, I'm probably about 7 or 8 or something at this point. Mm-hmm. And I would go around sort of the local sort of neighborhood and literally knock on people's doors or ring the doorbell, whatever, and offer to give them readings when I was a small child, which is probably quite weird. Like, you don't really expect like 7, 8 or whatever I was at the time to come knocking on your door saying, would you like to know your future? I can read the future with these cards. So I did that as well for a while. So I had sort of two kind of interests in this sort of the weird thing, and one being obviously the magic as we know, sleight of hand, and the other one would be more the sort of psychic stuff, as it were. So I did a lot of that sort of growing up. I stopped at some point. I can't remember how long I did that for, a couple of summers maybe. But once you've gone around the neighborhoods as a 7-year-old, probably not particularly intuitive. I'm literally just reading out, this card means this. This card, for fuck's sake, I knew this was going to happen. Bear with me. Someone's ringing on my doorbell. 1 second.
No problem. Really? Oh, brilliant. Well, learn the trick.
Sorry about that. I'm back.
That's okay. That's okay.
I got delivery of plastic bags.
Hey, living the dream.
I know. I got like hundreds of them now. so many plastic bags that I need, because I'm going to Magic Circle Dealers Day on Saturday, and I got a table there helping out my friend selling off some books from her late husband. So I got that. So I need plastic bags to, if I sell things to people. So there we go. Anyway,
hang on a second. We will start again. It's like this, Roland. It's there. Okay, be careful. Right. So I wish I could go to. I was going to go to the Circle Dealers Day. We both were, but we're stuck in the house, so we can't.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say, oh, well, are you going to come? But yeah, of course not.
Fortunately, not. So we'll take it from. Yeah. So you given it a couple of years ago. Okay. Right. So right. Okay. Got it. So here's a question for you. So you're a youngster, you're really into magic, you're focusing on sleight of hand. I know you mentioned that you had that desire to perform illusions on stage, but I think when you spent a long time focusing on close-up magic, didn't you, really, as opposed to stage?
No, for sure.
Yeah. And obviously you have this other interest as well. Where did you go from here? At what point? Like, did you? So what's the next step of the journey? Because to be honest, I didn't even know that you were from Sweden. I actually thought you were from.
There we go.
I didn't even know. So I suppose the next question is: did you then, when you finished education, did you become a full-time performer, or how did you end up in the UK? Because obviously your name is synonymous with Davenports, and we'll get to that part of your journey in a bit. So at some point you moved from Sweden to the UK. Where did all that come about?
So obviously went through my sort of school years, kept studying, kept buying books, kept buying VHS tapes back then. My interests quite quickly became more close up, for sure. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted to do some illusions. I remember me and my friend did practically like kind of close-up magic on stage for someone's birthday or whatever it was. But we had like a big black art type of illusion that I had built based on, what's his name, Darwin or something. Darwin had something called hundreds black art illusions, whatever it is, something like that it was called, those cheap illusions you can make yourself type of thing. And we had one of those as the final piece. But quickly I realized that I'm not going to be in that position very often. So I kind of kept doing the close-up magic stuff. Performed probably, I probably performed more when I was in my early teens than I've done since then, to be honest. Because then obviously school kind of took over and I was doing a lot of that, studying. But it's all points, always sort of keeping up with the magic and stuff, even though I wasn't necessarily out there performing it. I did shows here and there, but not a massive amounts. And again, this sort of ties into doing the whole psychic reading things. When I started realizing that there was such a thing as mentalism, and I bought like 13 Steps to Mentalism when I was, I don't know, what, 14 or 15. And I started realizing that there is this sort of kind of crossover. So I got more interested in that. And as I was getting more interested in that, I also started looking into more of the psychology of like the human mind, how it works. So my sort of pleasure reading was reading psychology textbooks.
Wow.
When I was growing up. So it was one of my favorite subjects in school. That's what I wanted to be. Then I thought, like, realistically, what am I going to do? And I thought, psychologist. I think that's my thing. And as you sort of come towards the end of the education, and you sort of have to start making those kind of decisions in Sweden, partially, I guess, because the education is free, means there's a lot of competition. Yeah. And whilst I wasn't doing great in school, I mean, probably slightly above average, not massively, but that's not good enough to get into the psychology course. And then you have the SAT test type things, national tests. I did that, and in order to get into the psychology school at that point, then you had to basically nail that and have like top marks in every single degree, in every single subject. And I didn't. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll take a year off, do a gap year. I moved to London. Well, me and a few friends, we were like, oh, we're going to go on a gap year and do something. So it was either like, well, we can go maybe to the States, like to New York. That would be cool, because we all watched Friends, so we wanted to have that experience. That didn't happen, because then it was like, oh, you have to have a green card, all of that kind of crap. And then it was like, well, we could go backpacking in Asia, but that's just like burning money and traveling. So we thought, well, we can go to London. That's easy, because England was in the EU at that point. Not anymore, but so we moved here, like me and like 7 other friends, got into some crappy flats, just for a bit of an adventure, bit of fun, for a year. And then the intention was to go back and try to get back into university. And as life sort of happens, I found a girlfriend here. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'll extend my gap year slightly, ride this one out, see what happens.
Okay.
And so I was with her for a couple of years, whatever it was. And then you sort of just get into this sort of flow, and you start understanding the country. You're no longer sort of just a foreigner who lives here. You're someone who lives. I know London probably better than most people, considering how many times I've been lost and trying to find my way around. And you didn't have Google Maps then, so you sort of just got lost all the time. So I really got to know the city in that sort of sense, and sort of fell in love with it. And I couldn't imagine myself moving back to start university, and that just got sort of prolonged. So I'm now on my, 15th gap year? I think 15. No, longer than that. Hold on. Wait. 19th gap year.
Wow.
So it's a slightly extended gap year for sure.
Well, London is an amazing place. It really is. It's very magical in many different ways.
I can't remember who the quote belongs to, but it's a famous quote. Like, when you grow tired of London, you grow tired of life.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. I've never heard that quote before, but it's
by someone. It might be just some meme. I honestly have no idea. I just remember reading it ages ago. But it feels kind of true that if you start getting bored of London, you're bored of life. I mean, London has its own challenges, and it's difficult, certainly these days. But But it's a wonderful city, and I love it more than anything, really. So
it's great. And how did you get involved? I mean, obviously, when you came over on the gap year, were you still doing magic when you did your initial gap year? Obviously, I suppose that the goal wasn't to come over here and do anything magic related, really.
no, it was just to work in some, maybe like some fashion retail or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember what my plans were. It was literally just to do whatever for a year. But obviously, I was still doing magic on the side, always. Like I said, I've never stopped. And so I came over here. I had some random sort of odd jobs. Like I worked in some, oh, this was a good one, actually. Like one of my first jobs, it was my second job. My first job was working as apparently some sort of retail assistant in some fashionable furniture store in Chelsea. It turned out when I got there that it was just opening the door for the customers. So that lasted one day. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to just fucking stand here and open the door for people. No. So I left that job, surprisingly. And but then I started working in a book warehouse for a book publisher.
Oh, okay.
It was down by the Thames. It was in just basically a metal shed, effectively. Very large shed, mind you, but that's what it felt like. And it was just books. And it was a publisher that specifically dealt with textbooks for universities. And a lot of their sort of catalog involved psychology textbooks. So again, I was like, ooh, psychology textbooks, interesting. So I found myself just sort of flicking through them as I was working. And sort of back then, you didn't really have Amazon in the same sense. And I reckon now a lot of the damaged books, it might be like a little tiny dog ear on the cover that is unsellable for the publishing company. And I reckon those sort of kind of books that now get taken by other sort of Amazon sellers and sold as sort of slightly used or whatever, rather than being binned, which they were at that point. So I quickly realized that I could slightly dog ear a book that I really liked and put it in the bin to be processed. And I had to wait for a day or two. It got through to the back room of the warehouse in these massive cardboard boxes that I spent my lunchtime sort of digging through, trying to find books. No one else in that warehouse understood me. They're like, what the fuck are you just digging through all of these cardboard boxes? No, but it's these books. And they're like, you know, like if you've been to university, they're like 60, 80 quid a book at least. So it was like, yes, sweet. So I just dog ear a book. Oh, this one is damaged. Process that one. And then I just had to find the relevant cardboard box and try to dig it out. So I did that for a while. So anyway, apart from that, it wasn't a nice job. It was horrible. It was very cold. It was very wet. I was sort of like damp in there, which is not good for a book warehouse, but whatever. And I then got a job in Marvin's Magic. So
okay.
So I went through that sort of channel, as a lot of magicians do, and it's only anyone who lives anywhere near London tends to do that.
And were you performing as well? Were you doing gigs, or was it just literally working with Marvin's? Not that
I did some gigs, and not. I'm like, my main thing has never been being a professional performer by any means. I have done professional gigs, don't get me wrong, but that's never been my main sort of passion. Like I said before, I sort of fell into it a bit when I was younger. I started doing it and didn't think anything of it. I just thought that is what you do as a magician. You do these gigs. I came to London, sort of kept it up to some extent. I did some gigs. It's quite difficult though, like coming to a new city like London. All of a sudden, it's like London has more people than the entire country of Sweden. So it's a bit different. Whereas I come from a small hometown of 30,000 people. It was a bit easier to get gigs there than it is over here. Because here you've got all the competition. Here you have to have like the websites, everything sort of set up. And there over here I didn't have anything. So I did some gigs. I got a few gigs through working through Marvin's Magic,
Okay.
which you're not supposed to do. So if Marvin is watching, I'm sorry, but so I did then work for Marvin's for about a year and a half or something like that, until he fired me. Yeah. I mean, retail business was down anyway, especially like in Hamleys, everything was down with a few percent to the previous year. And it was more of a thing of a like last one in, first one out kind of thing. And also I couldn't sell the drawing boards that they had. So he said that he didn't have any shifts for me. So I was like, okay, I'll find another job. Then I needed a P45. So I phoned him up a year later, asking for my P45, saying I quit. He's like, well, I thought I fired you like a year ago. No, you just didn't give me any shifts for 1 year. That's all. And so I got my P45, and that was it. My time with Marvin's. I love it so much, though. It's one of the best places you can work as a magician. Certainly when you're sort of starting out, of getting that experience. So I have absolutely no hard feelings with Marvin's Magic. I wasn't doing as well as I should have done, so it makes sense. But that kind of job, any sort of shop demonstrator, even if it isn't magic, will teach you so much about magic. And so I recommend anyone who's actually watching this to just seek out those kind of jobs and get that experience.
Well, it's that thing that as a professional performer you have to learn, which is the ability to go up to people and make them want to listen to you within a few seconds, which is something that a lot of magicians struggle with. That initial approach is something that really
absolutely,
yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's one of the main things you sort of take away from there, because you're not going to go out doing dynamic coins or a Svengali deck in your professional gigs, but you learn how to talk to people, and not just people, but it's people from all sorts of different backgrounds, young people, old people, different countries, all that kind of stuff. And I think that is very important.
Yeah.
As someone who does magic, of being able to sort of communicate with people from all backgrounds.
Yeah, I agree. So where did you go from that point on? So you left Marvin's. Marvin's and you parted ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did you said, right, I want to get another job. Did you purposefully want to try and get something in magic again? Were you looking for that? Or is it a case of I just need to find anything?
That was a slightly sort of difficult time for me, because that initial girlfriend that sort of kept me in the country, she had to move back to her country because she wasn't English. So I had that sort of issue with it. And that happened basically at the same time as I sort of left Marvin's Magic. So it was a bit of a tough time, like sort of emotionally and sort of mentally. I was unemployed for a little while. Mm-hmm. But I then started getting back into the sort of working again. And I did a lot of, unfortunately, like call centers, telemarketing, that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry for anyone who I've ever called, because it's the most horrible thing. I'll just phoning people, hey, do you like butter? Okay, great. Let's talk about butter for 45 minutes. No one wants to do that, as it turns out. Nope. But again, it sort of does help you in some ways of how can I phone people and talk about butter? Genuinely, I've been on projects where it was a 45-minute interview about butter. And like, you have to rate this from 1 to 5, like how important is, how spreadable it is from 1 to 5. 4, okay, cool. How important is the flavor from 1 to 5? And it was all of that, and like for 45 minutes, it's not enjoyable.
No.
And I think that sort of a business has sort of died down quite a lot in that sense of like that invasive phoning people. But anyway, I did that, but it does help you in some ways, I think, to learn how to talk to people and make them not just hang up on you. But I did that for a while. I then got fed up with that, of course. I then started working in Natural History Museum here in London.
Wow.
which is where I also met my wife, which was nice. And so again, back into retail. Again, still not magic. I mean, again, still doing magic all the time, but not doing magic. But again, working just with lots of people from different backgrounds, and that's, I mean, that's the key thing for me. I think throughout sort of my working kind of history is that's what I enjoy doing, working with people from different backgrounds, be it socially or geographically different places. So I did that and moved on from there. Worked in Borders, the bookshop that closed down, and then again I was back in some sort of telemarketing kind of thing. And one day I'm sitting at work. It's not telemarketing, I was doing it online at this point, but one day at work I get a phone call from Bill Davenport from Davenports Magic saying, "Hey man, would you like to work for us?" Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, great, can you come in on Monday? Yeah, no, sure, yeah, absolutely. This wasn't like a Friday or something, or Thursday, I think it was. On Friday, I handed in my notice, whatever, to that company, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm not doing this anymore. Bye bye." And then started working for Davenports.
So what?
Also, by the way, at some point during all of this, I've also worked with, as you mentioned before, Lee Hathaway. I worked at his magic stall in Covent Garden, or him and Neil Henry, who owned this magic stall, Magic Cave, in Covent Garden. And I worked there sort of on and off for a couple of years, maybe, as I was doing other things. But yeah, and then I ended up in Davenports.
And how did you get on the Davenport family's radar, like for them to ring you up and go, "Hey, want a job?" Because that's the holy grail for a lot of magicians. A lot of magicians in London were like, "Oh my God, if I could work at either International or Davenport's, that would be..."
Yeah, exactly. There's two places.
Yeah, that'd be the thing. So how did you you didn't go to them, they came to you. How did that all come about?
Yeah, because the thing, I guess, with small places like, I don't know what International Magic's their sort of hiring strategy is, because it's the same guys that I've seen there for the past 20 years almost are still there. But with Davenports, like when someone leaves, you try to find somebody else to sort of fill your shoes, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul Brown, who was the demonstrator there prior to me, he was going to leave. And my good friend Daniel Stambridge sort of got in there, sort of around a bit before Paul left. But they had decided that maybe we should have two demonstrators. And they had asked, I guess they were asking Daniel Stambridge, like, who should we get? And at this point, I've known Dan for a couple of years, maybe, like, because I was working on and off at the Magic Stall in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
So we got to sort of know each other. And he said, "Well, I think Daniel Young would be good for this. So get him in." And that's when I got the phone call, like, "Do you want to start working?" "Yeah, great." And then I was there for 10 years or something like that.
And you were there until the very end, weren't you? Because obviously,
the very end, yeah.
For people that don't know, because they're maybe not in this country, unfortunately, last year, Davenport's ceased trading. Well, they're no longer around anymore, are they?
They closed the physical shop.
Yeah, they've still got an online presence, but
yeah,
the physical shop.
So I mean, it's a business that started in 1898. So it's been going for a long time, and it used to be a very big deal. And I think that's sort of like with the advent of a lot of the online shops, they may not have kept up with it as well as they should have done.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not for me to speak about what they've done. But yeah, so yeah, I started working there. I mean, it was the greatest thing ever. I mean, it was my ideal job. Well, like, I get to work in a magic shop. I mean, it was the first magic shop I came to in London when I moved here. Founders like, "Oh, this is magic," and I would spend like afternoons there just sitting there and chatting to the demonstrators at the time. Paul Brown's the more latest one, James Laver, and I can't remember who it was before that, but became sort of friends with all of them throughout my stay here. But it's like, it's the ideal job for anyone who's into magic.
Yeah.
Your job is to chat magic, meet magicians, read magic, learn tricks. I mean, what more can you ask for, really?
And yeah, and you, like you said, you were there for a decade. So, I mean, that's, you've seen a lot of changes. You've seen a lot of people come and go. You've seen a lot of big names come into the shop, because
for sure, yeah.
Davenports is the sort of, or was the destination for magicians. When you come to London, you go and go and visit Davenports. A lot of people that travel to come to the Magic Circle, they would make a day of it and they would go to Davenports. It's
exactly, yeah.
Had such a steady stream of traffic, of people constantly coming in and wanting to see whatever the latest and greatest thing is, or what you guys have got in, and being the demonstrator, the person on the front line, so to speak, that's interfacing with all of the people coming in the shop, must have been amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get more central. Like, central London is measured from Charing Cross, from this, what looks like a church spire that sticks out on the ground outside of Charing Cross train station. And we were literally, 20 meters away from that kind of thing. So it doesn't get more central. So yeah, we did get all of those people. And I think that, I mean, one of the things I really liked about it is that you got all of the magicians. Like, you might be going out with someone for lunch or something, but rather than going like, "Oh, I'll meet you on the street corner of this street and this street," whatever, let's just meet in Davenports. It was sort of the hub for meeting people. There's a lot of people would just come in, have a chat, and they would wait for their friend who would come. They would go to the pub or whatever, go have lunch, have a couple of drinks. So you were sort of really sort of bang in the middle of that. Which I think is, that's certainly the thing that I miss the most. And it used to be, to some extent, like with the magic stall in Covent Garden, used to be that like a hub for magicians who I have nothing to do. I guess I go into Covent Garden and hang out for a bit. And you have all of that sort of social aspect. And Davenports, to some extent, was that as well. I don't know what it was like in terms of social aspect before me. I can only speak for when I was there, me and the other Daniel. We had a lot of people that would come in every week, not necessarily being customers, which Betty Davenport probably would have hated. She liked people spending money. Spend money now. But a lot of people would just come in and just have a chat. And I think that's what it's sort of, it feels like it's missing a bit in London, I think, these days, of having that, of just go somewhere, there's going to be a bunch of magicians there. Go there, meet up with them, hang out.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and while you were there, obviously one thing that you did, and we haven't touched on this at all, but I think we need to, is you started releasing some of your own creations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'd released things prior to that.
Let's very quickly, I want to talk more about Davenports in a minute, but let's talk about the creativity side of things, because you have released so many tricks over the years and they're all amazing, and they really are. When did you start creating magic, and what was the reason for doing that? Was it as a desire for something for your own act, or was it because you wanted to release something to the magic community?
Neither, I think. And to some extent, it was just for my own sort of amusement more than anything else. I mean, I have performed everything I've released, I have performed, but the goal was never, I mean, I guess it was for my own act or whatever you want to call it. But again, like I said before, my main focus was never, or certainly not in the later years, wasn't to perform professionally. But I liked inventing things. I liked tinkering with things and sort of coming up with different sort of solutions to different problems. That's always sort of been my thing in life, and just in general. Like everything I do in life is how can I make it more efficient? How can I make it better? Yeah. Even if it isn't necessarily magic, it could be anything. I remember when we first got a knife set here, kitchen knives.
Yeah.
My wife kept putting them with the blade side down into this sort of diagonal thing, which is not good. It's well, no, it's harder to pull them out. It's dulling the blades. So I flipped them over so the blade is facing up. The sharp side is facing up. So that's not magic, but it's always thinking about like how can things be better made, and like how can it be more efficient.
Yeah.
And so that's always been the thing for me, of like finding better ways of doing things, just in general, whether it be magic or not.
Yeah.
I remember my first magic trick, because I sort of anticipated this question. I was trying to think back on why I have released my first ever magic trick. Let's see. I would have had a deck of cards, but I would have secretly palmed a card and asked someone, look at the top card, put it back. So they would look at it, put it back. And so you looked at that card and I put it into the middle. And I was on top. Ta-da! That was my first ever magic trick that I had sort of thought of on my own. And I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something at the time. I didn't know about the double lift. I didn't know the ambitious card at this point. I learned about that obviously later, but I remember that being the first thing I ever sort of dreamt up, as it were. I then, like with one of the Swedish magic companies called Magic Vision, they were my sort of go-to dealer. I was buying all stuff from them all the time. And I remember buying a thumb tip and a silk, doing that. And I then wrote like little booklets of instruction manual thing for thumb tips at this point. I don't even know if I have a copy of it anymore. It probably wasn't great, but I wrote it up on a computer, printed it, bound it, stapled it, and sent it to the magic company, and they sold it sometimes with a thumb tips as a little additional thing. I don't know what it costs, like £2. You can get this instruction manual for the thumb tip. And then I did some other releases through that company as well. I had 2 other small booklets that I put out with like close-up stuff with them, and one individual trick. This is all still back in Sweden. I moved here, and in terms of like creativity, my main thing, and I think this is important as well, like when we talk about creativity, there are 2 different types of creative people. The people that can just dream up anything, like some crazy weird thing, and then you get the other people that tend to be more tinkerers and trying to fix things. And I'm more so in that camp than dreaming up completely new things. But I remember one of my first things here, and again, I put out some ebooks and random stuff, but one of my first physical products in the UK was when we put out the Cerebro, which was what kickstarted all of the what's it called, bone conduction units that mentalists use. Yeah. So the Cerebro, which was the first one, which was my idea, subsequently like stolen from me by my sort of business partner called James. So he sort of took that and made it his own. Mm-hmm. I think I get a little tiny mention in the instruction manual or something. I mean, it's no longer produced, but he took that from me, and that was fun. This first time I ever had death threats.
What?
I'm being threatened to be sent home to Sweden in a coffin.
Why?
Because I sort of outed him for having stolen it from me. But you know what the magic community is like. They like to throw around death threats randomly.
Yeah, I've had a few of them in my career, to be perfectly honest. Yeah.
So he was a bit pissed off that I said that you've stolen my thing. It was very much a me and James thing, so I'm not claiming complete originality with it, but the initial seed of the idea was mine. I was chatting to James, who was a good friend of mine at the time. He then turned, for whatever reason, God knows why, and threatened to kill me. I mean, I still got the audio recordings of it. So if anyone doesn't believe me, I'll happily send them along. So that was my first sort of initial thing. And I mean, that the whole bone conduction thing has taken off since then. It was still a bit in the infant stage at this point, I think. When we released it, he cut off ties with me completely. He then took it on and made it a lot better. So all credits to him for that. So that was my first sort of physical products over here in the UK. And again, I'm still releasing ebooks of things. At this point, it's mostly mentalism, by the way. I sort of completely switched over to mentalism when I was about 15 or 16.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was that, and then like where people sort of start knowing me for, I mean, I think a lot of people have probably forgotten me for it now, but the Cannabis Effect that came out in 2007.
I mean, that was such a groundbreaking routine.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously, I think it's excellent. And I don't know, maybe it was of its time. I don't know, like if I release it now, how well would it do? I don't know. So the different, like the magic scene is different now. But I think at the time, I think it did well. I remember Lee was mentioning this as well. It was one of the best-selling things in 2007.
It was everyone was doing it, and it was such a commercial routine as well. And I said to him, he needs to re-release it because it is so good.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of. I mean, I know he was being a bit wishy-washy on his answer on that. On like, should we re-release it, or is it a thing of the past, and maybe we should just leave it there? We talk about it every now and then. Like, should we re-release it? I mean, it's obviously called the Cannabis Effect, which is an acronym, by the way, nothing to do with the drug, which stands for card at any named number amongst blanks is selected, which is obviously not contrived at all. And I thought it could be quite fun to re-release it exactly the same way it was then, and just call it Rehash. I thought that was quite funny.
That works on many levels.
Exactly, he's just going to rehash it. So yeah, I thought it was hilarious. So maybe just for that reason alone, I might just re-release it, even if I just sell one. I don't care, just so I can say, oh, I did re-release it called Rehash. That amused me. But I think that's where people sort of started to know who I was. But also, I don't release things frequently by any means. And so I think the cycles I tend to go through is like every 7 years I put out something. I'm actually due to release something this year if I'm following that sort of cycle. But I don't think that's going to happen. So maybe next year. But I think people sort of tend to forget, like people forget what was released last week, let alone 7 years ago.
Things have changed since the Cannabis Effect came out, and there's so many tricks. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know how any magic shop can keep up. I mean, you
can't.
Yeah, you refresh somewhere like Penguin in the morning, and there's another 100 different routines, and it's like, wow. It's like you can't physically watch everything. I know. I try. I do the review show every week.
Yeah.
And me and Ryan could probably do 7 review shows a week, and we still wouldn't be able to review everything that's coming out. Like,
probably. I mean, that was my morning thing in like Davenports. I would come into work, open up Murphy's, and check like 10 different new releases, see what they're about. Are they worth getting in? I don't know. And I mean, more often than not, they're not worth getting in, but there's so many of them coming out. But at that point, I was constantly being sort of on top of it, well, as much as I could. And you would still have customers coming in and asking, oh, have you seen the latest whatever? And you go, no, I haven't heard of it. No, but it's it's a big thing. Is it? It's not Murphy's. It's not a big thing. Because that's sort of how it works these days. For better or worse, is that if it's not on Murphy's, it's not a big thing.
Yeah.
So.
And then obviously at Davenports, you continued to release great magic. You said that you're due to release one this year. What was the last thing you released 7 years ago?
That would have been what you bought from me. One of the few people, the boy in Blackpool. It would have been my H2 oil and my Open Dreams.
I've got them over there. I think they're great. Absolutely,
I think so.
love them. Love them. Yeah.
They didn't do well in Blackpool at all.
I don't know why. They're both incredible routines.
I think so, but I think the crowd in Blackpool are looking for something different. They are looking at that and they're seeing, I mean, we sold some, don't get me wrong, but they're looking for like toys. They don't look like toys. They look like card tricks. I was like, well, I don't want to buy that. I mean, subsequently, I've sold hundreds of them since. But during the Blackpool weekend, I don't know, we sold maybe 20, 30 of each, maybe something like that.
And they are
It's
still
not
available,
bad, but it's not great.
Are they still available?
I don't think so.
No.
Since Davenport sort of went online purely, it has sort of stopped the physical production of certain things. So things that we did use to produce, which were those two tricks, they were the main things. They're no longer producing them, I think. They might still have some, so if anyone is interested, it's worth probably emailing them and asking. There might still be some in the box somewhere. But I don't know. Because I don't like, since they went online, I don't work with them anymore. I wish I could, but unfortunately, it's a small business. It could easily be run by one or two people, and they sort of got that covered. So me and the other Daniel, unfortunately, had to sort of move on. But there might still be a few copies around somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've released those. But also, like, as much as I love them as tricks, they're not that important to me. But I felt more passionate about was a lot of the instructional DVDs I did for some more beginners things. So for like Svengali Deck, Linking Rings, Professor's Nightmare, Sponge Balls, I did some close-up magic, lots of different things that we did sort of instructional basic kind of DVDs for.
Yeah.
And I'm more happy about those. I mean, not happy, but I think they are more important than a couple of card tricks. Because I know a lot of young kids would have been in Davenports and bought those DVDs, and was hoping that I didn't sort of completely kind of crush their dreams and made them feel not inspired. But I'm hoping that they enjoyed them and that got them sort of started. So for me, that feels more kind of important. And like I said, like me releasing a couple of card tricks, who cares really?
Yeah,
doing something for the kids, I think, is more important.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And let's circle back to Davenports for a bit. I mean, obviously, we talked about how you worked there for a decade. Is there anything that you can tell us? Any interesting stories or funny stories? Because Davenport is so iconic.
How long have you got?
Well, I'm just thinking Davenports is so iconic, and it's such a shame it's not around anymore. And as for somebody who's been there for 10 years, I'm sure that there's something that you can tell us. And
I mean, yeah. I mean, literally, we could have just had a live feed, like a camera running daily, and people would watch it, because there's so many like weird things, some very stupid, silly things, some not so funny maybe, but interesting nonetheless. So yeah, there's been honestly been so many. A couple of like standout things, and I think it's important to understand, because like I know that some people like gave Google reviews of Davenports and was sort of slagging it off. So, oh, it smells like piss going there, whatever. And yes, the final location wasn't great. I mean, it was great when it first moved there. It just sort of degraded as it went along, unfortunately, which is nothing to do with Davenports. It's all to do with the council and the police, who sort of just wanted, like, it's a blind spot for them. I mean, they knew it was there, but they didn't want to deal with any of it. There was a quite large sort of drug problem with some of the people outside of the shop, the ones that were urinating in the corners and whatever, and doing lots of drugs, which then unfortunately doesn't reflect well on the business. And people always said, like, oh, but why don't you just move? Like, yeah, and it's not quite that easy. We were looking at locations for sure for years of trying to find something that's central and that has the things that we wanted from that retail space. Just didn't happen, unfortunately. But a lot of people sort of combine the whole experience, like, oh, you know, they didn't like the people outside, and that sort of taints their experience of Davenports. But I think the fact that we, like, I mean, I have so many friends that I made working in Davenports who will continuously come there just to have a chat, look at things, whatever. I think that speaks somewhat for it. That is like, yeah, if you can overlook that bit, then it's actually a really good experience. but yeah, it was certain issues. If you go from worst sort of to best, I guess. At one point, because where it was in the sort of this underground arcade, they shuttered that off at night, so you couldn't get into the space. But some people had found a way of opening up the gates, and they were running a drug dealing operation from inside of. They would then close the gates again, and they were running this drug dealing operation from inside of the gates, which we then, thanks to us, I guess, they sort of discovered this operation and busted it, so that didn't exist anymore, and that obviously pissed off some people, like the people dealing drugs, that they were making a good living there, because there's a homeless shelter there's on street level, and a lot of drug dealers, a lot of drug takers would come down from there. But we sort of stopped that, and they knew it was us. So they had like painted snitch like large across these massive windows that we have. They're trying to set fire to the shop. They tried to break into the shop a couple of times. Like when we were in there, we had to lock the doors. They were slamming on the doors, trying to get in, saying, "We're going to fucking stab you," that kind of stuff. So that's something that we had to sort of deal with on a daily basis, and the people outside of the shops. And a lot of people don't quite realize, like, these people are harmless to the people just walking past. They didn't care about them. They cared about us, because they knew that we were the ones phoning the police 5 or 6, 7 times a day. And the police, more often than not, didn't turn up. When they did, they said, "Guys, do you mind just moving along a bit?" And they go, "Nah." And the police go, "Oh, okay, then fine. We've attended that now," so then they bug it off. And so we had to live with that like 5 days a week, which a lot of people don't quite understand.
No.
And we had the threats and people shouting that they were going to beat us up and kill us and stab us, all that kind of stuff. And considering the local people, you sort of have to, you can't quite dismiss it. You go like, "Yeah, no, I know they're just mouthing off," but you just never know with some of these people.
Yeah.
And I remember one in particular, they used to hang out outside, and he was interviewed by the BBC or ITV or Channel 4 or something or another. And he used to say, like, "Yeah, but I can't get my drugs. I just feel like killing someone." Well, yeah, he used to hang out outside of the shop. I thought, "Oh, great, this is fun." But yeah, so it was an issue with like local council who didn't know how to deal with that area, and the police who was super stretched. So I mean, I do appreciate the police that did come down and did try to do something, but they were so stretched. There were like 2 officers in a massive area. It's like, well, we can't get to that place 7 times a day. It's just not going to happen. So that was sort of the worst. The kind of arson attempts and threats of murder. We used to have some guy who used to phone. He was more of a magic shop customer. He wasn't one of the crazy people. Well, he was crazy, but not one of the homeless people. But some guy who clearly knew a bit about magic and thought that we had poisoned him or something at some point. I don't know what he was thinking. And he used to phone up every so often and threaten to kill us and the entire family and everyone. And it turned out that he's some paranoid schizophrenic, and he wasn't always taking his meds. So when he wasn't, then his sort of enemy was Davenport's family, and he was going to come and kill everyone. He came in eventually one day, and we managed to get him arrested, but arrested, it doesn't really mean anything. He got back to his home, and they locked him down more securely to make sure he didn't get out or couldn't make phone calls to Davenports. But that was sort of a daily occurrence of getting these things. And I think there's a lot of people that don't quite understand that. Like, so when they're slagging off Davenports, they don't quite always take into account all of the bullshit that we had to deal with on a daily basis. And so when you're then hearing like, "Oh, they don't know anything about their products or whatever," it's like, oh, we do know, and we do care about every single customer that comes in through the doors. But a lot of people don't see that. They see one sort of snapshot and don't take in the sort of whole thing into account. So we would have, like, I mean, I remember some customers as well. I'm saying my Daniel. When I say my Daniel, I mean Daniel Stanbridge. I just
Yeah.
refer to him as my Dan.
Yeah.
I remember he was working. I wasn't in that day, or I was in later on. I can't remember. And he was working. Someone comes in and saying that was strong magic, and he was a bit confused. Like, what do you mean? And it transpired he meant the book Strong Magic, not just in general what is strong magic. Yeah. And Dan then sort of
Darwin Ortiz, I think, isn't it? Darwin Ortiz.
Exactly, yeah. So he'd obviously seen that on the bookshelf, whatever, asking what is strong magic. But Dan sort of got a bit confused, thinking he has meant like what is good magic in general. But then transpired it was a book that he meant, and he sort of explained what it was about. And the guy said, like, yeah, I just wanted to punch you in the face because he didn't know what the product was about. No, he knew what the product was about. He just didn't know what he meant, like what he was referring to. And so he then, like, this guy apparently wanted to punch him in the face. And another one, I won't name him by name, but he's relatively well known. He came in early in the morning, I think, maybe 11 in the morning or something. It was me and Dan both there. And came in, we had a quick chat. He was looking around. I had to go to the bathroom, which is sort of next door. So I had to leave, go to the bathroom. I come back in, and so with the Davenports once, we had a counter, and behind the counter we had the books. It wasn't that we were trying to keep them away from people. It's just logistically, like, where do we put them? And they just happened to be there. And he had asked, like, do you mind if I come around and have a look? And my dad had said, yeah, of course, have a look. And by this point, I come back, we have a good chat, we have a bit of a laugh. He leaves eventually. I can't remember if he left a Google review as well, but he certainly sent an angry email saying that I didn't give a shit about customers because I just left when he came in. I went on a toilet break. And I came back, like, a few minutes later. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I was trying to get behind the counter to look at the books, but it was like I had to twist their arm really to get behind that. No, you're just making things up. And then, like, we had a good conversation for like half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And then he still sends that sort of email, leaves that sort of review online, whatever it was. I was like, really? Like, what is that? And there's so many things like that. Which again is slightly more on the negative side, but like, just to share one more kind of fun story.
Yeah.
Davenports, obviously having magic in the name, attracts certain types of people that think it's, magic, not sleight of hand. They think it's magic. And we had this pair of two relatively young sort of African girls, and they tend to be a little bit more on the superstitious side.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had come in for whatever reason, and they sort of walked around a bit, and they saw something called the money maker. It's one of those little, put in a blank piece of paper, you roll it, and it comes out as a £5 note or whatever. And they're sort of asking me about this, and I'm getting a weird vibe from these two. I was like, I'm trying to palm them off on my Daniel. So I was like, yeah, and I'm getting busy with something else. So he had to deal with them, and he showed them, like, okay, I'll show you how it works. And so he set it up and took a blank piece of paper, rolled it through, it became a £5 note. And he said, obviously, you can keep doing this, but obviously I've just set it up for like one banknote, but you can do a few more. They're like, oh, okay. How much is it? It's £5. So they bought it, and it went away, and we thought nothing else of it. And then they came back, and they came back and sat down on a chair, both of them, and fell asleep for about an hour. But apart from that, they then woke up, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't work. It could be faulty, maybe. Maybe they broke it somehow. We don't know. And again, I'm not really, I'm there, but I'm not the one dealing with this, my Daniel. And they're like, yeah, it's not working. Oh, no, look, it works. Yeah, we tried to put in more blank pieces of paper, but it doesn't become £5 notes when we do it. It's not actual magic. It's just a magic trick, It's not actually magically printing money. Why would we be here? If we had this little machine that could just literally just print money. So that was quite fun. We got a lot of those kind of people. Another one which is quite funny is called, I mean, he had an actual name, but his nickname was Satan Boy, because he thought that we had some black magic kind of powers. And he would come in and he would buy like an ESP deck or something like that. And he would then, he was homeless, so he did have a bit of his spirit lingered in the shop, shall we say, for some time. But he would then go out and sit sort of outside and lay these ESP cards out and making some scribble notes, not even real notes, he's making some drawing scribbles. Yes. Ooh, oh, okay. He's like, what the fuck is going on? But he would keep doing this, and he had so many weird. He would come in and just sort of wanting to be a part of it because he was mentally a bit not all there, and I think he got bullied by some of the other homeless people and continuously got beaten up and that kind of stuff. So we were very nice to him, but sometimes we had to say like, look, mate, you have to get out. Like, it's stunk badly. But he would then, like, one day he came in with a bunch of, I don't know what it was, lavender or something. I don't know what it is that they burn to get the evil spirits out of the room. And he came in, like, no, you can't do that. That will set off the fire alarm. You can't burn this shit here. Get out. No, out. So I had to throw him out for that. I remember being outside. I'd just gone to get my lunch or something. I was on the street level. And there's a school class coming by. So like 30, 40 students, whatever. And he comes up and sees me standing outside or like sort of coming in. And he gets onto the ground and starts bowing to me. Oh, master. And I'm going, what is going on? And all the kids and everyone is like, what is going on? Why is this guy? So he was a frequent customer. And he also like he came and gifted the other Dan with a twig. There was a magic wand that he had quested for very hard, whatever that meant, but some sort of Harry Potter-esque kind of twig. And like, here you go. Okay. And yeah, so he was interesting. I mean, he offered some sort of adult services to me for my magical powers, that kind of stuff, which was a bit weird. So yeah, we had a lot of interesting people coming into Davenport, to say the least. Honestly, I could go on for like hours of like,
wow,
come in.
Never a dull day, right?
No, there were plenty of those as well, but some of these certainly made up for the dull ones. But again, there's like, so those are obviously the weird people, but even talking just about the normal magicians that would come in there, which did sort of annoy me sometimes. And I think magicians aren't particularly good customers of magic. They don't really know what they want. We were trying to do more of a sort of a cultivated range of things rather than having, like you get with online businesses these days, their website in some instances are basically run by Murphy's Magic. They just automatically get the update from Murphy's Magic, all of the things that comes in. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to stock just the stuff that we had in the shop that we thought were good. And so sometimes we had people coming in and saying, oh, do you have this? And we didn't because it was shit. And I can at least recall one or two times, I think there's come up in either private emails or Google reviews or Facebook posts, whatever it was. Like, oh, they don't have these things in stock, this shit, whatever. And well, no, we didn't stock that because it's not a good product. We're saving you money. But they don't see it that way. They see it like, oh, I wanted this. It looked amazing on the video. And then something equally, we've had that several times as well, of like, yeah, it looked great on video. We got a couple of in as a sample kind of thing to just have a look at it, see if it's worth stocking. And it's not really. Or if we made it up, like, yeah, we can demo it, but then we can't sell the demonstration unit. And it's not something we're necessarily going to stock for a long time. And so then it became like the issue of like, oh, well, why can't you demonstrate? Well, I mean, because it means I have to make up this gimmick and everything. And that also became like a thing of like, sometimes we had people saying, oh, they don't want to show products. They don't know anything about their own products. No, we don't. It's not that we don't want to show you. You're just asking about things that we can't show, or whatever it happens to be. So we got a lot of that, which was annoying. And things like, oh, but I've seen this has been released now. Do you have it? No, it's literally been released this morning, like 2 hours ago. No, we don't have it. And they expected us to have it, and we didn't. And then again, they were sort of slagging us off online. It's like, no, yes, we didn't have it like 2 hours after its release. Sorry, we had it the day after, but you know. Anyway.
I mean, good grief. I mean, it must have been very frustrating. I mean, I work on the phones a lot of the time with I run a company where we're fielding phone calls all the time, and I work quite closely with the sales team. And it can be frustrating dealing with customers because despite what people say, the customer is not always right.
Oh, no, I was literally going to say that. Like, I mean, most cases they're wrong. But no, it's only when they complain, oftentimes they're wrong. But it's a job of a business to make them happy. Exactly. But that doesn't make them not wrong in the first place. But
yeah. Well, here's one more question about Davenports. Obviously, it closed during the pandemic.
Yep. And I believe just before, but yeah,
just before. And I think it closed because they lost the lease. It wasn't because of, wasn't it? It was like the lease went or something. Now, obviously,
I mean, there were some rumors about that as well. That we lied about them redeveloping the area, but it wasn't that. No, the landlords sold off the area, and again, this all ties back to, as far as I understand things. So, bearing in mind, I'm just a retail worker in a shop. I was the one liaising with the police and the council, and I was in touch with all of these people, dealing with them on almost a daily basis. I was invited to police meetings and that kind of stuff. And part of the problem was that they couldn't figure out how to deal with the homeless problem outside. I mean, it's not the fact that they're just homeless. That's not the issue. It's the issue is with the people. They just go, well, we're out of sight from people. Let's just go down there and do drugs. And they didn't know how to deal with that because the police were so short-staffed, so they couldn't get to that area. The council didn't know what to do with it. They owned that bit of land. Westminster Council owned that bit of land outside of the shops, and they wanted the Coots Bank or whoever owns them these days, Royal Bank of Scotland or whatever it is, to buy out that bit of land. And they were basically begging them to, like, please buy it off us. We don't want it. Just do whatever, get rid of it. And they didn't want it either because it's like, well, what are we going to do with it? It's not a retail space that is working. So they're not going to get new tenants in there. And then eventually, I think they sort of succumbed to it and just went, okay, yeah, we'll buy it for like peanuts or whatever it was. And that's all being redeveloped into, I believe, some sort of office space, like the basement of the bank that's on top of us. Well, I'm saying on top of us as if I'm still there, but you get what I'm saying.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is there a chance that Davenports might once again reopen as a physical shop?
Honestly, I don't know.
Ship pretty much sailed.
I know they want to, absolutely, because I mean, it's a family business. It's, like I said, it's been in business since 1898, so they very much want that physical sort of presence. Retail just full stop in certainly in London. I'm guessing all over the world, really, but specifically in London is very difficult. It's very expensive, which is why you tend to get mostly as big chains everywhere. You don't get many sort of independent small shops. And having an independent small shop, ideally located in central London, it's nigh on impossible to sort of run that kind of business. Especially like we wanted to have the teaching space in the shop as well, which was very important for us. We also had a club that was the London Society of Magicians. They used to meet there, and we had the classes all going in this sort of back room. I know you would have seen it. You were there filming something for some TV show what, 2017 or something, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that. I asked you guys if I could. It was a nightmare getting that big illusion down there. Like
Yeah.
we took the big Mangler illusion, which is massive because that's what they wanted on the TV show. And,
Yeah.
and like, okay, we set parking a van in central London.
Oh yeah, that's even that alone is not happening.
Yeah, that was the first challenge. Right, okay, we're going to pull the van up here for like 10 seconds. I'm going to dump the thing out. You go park. That'll take you about the rest of the day, but good luck. You go do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I'm having to get this massive illusion down the down the stairs, and then when I got into Davenports, it wouldn't go. It wouldn't go into the back. It was that. Yeah, the whole thing was a nut. I mean, we managed it eventually somehow, but it was a lot more problematic than I thought it was going to be be perfectly honest.
I mean, there was a lift that you guys could have used, but
I didn't know that. That would have made it a little bit easier.
I mean, it's still difficult, but there is there was a lift that goes up and down. It's not for normal people, but it's for businesses and stuff. So. But anyway, it was a good time. I sincerely miss working there. And I mean, the job itself, I mean, it sounds like the greatest thing ever. You get to be around magic and everything, and it is in so many ways, but it's not without its challenges, and sometimes you struggle a bit. Sometimes to recommend things to people based on what you have in stock, their skill level, and that kind of stuff. So it's not easy by any means, but it's a great job, and again, it's a great experience. So if you happen to have a magic shop near you, go there. I mean, you can sit and read magic books in the back all day long. I mean, how great is that?
Amazing.
But yeah, sadly that came to an end. I mean, more than anything, for me, it was the social aspect that sort of disappeared because so many of my friends, they would just sort of come in and hang out. It's not necessarily like these days now because I'm not in a shop. Now you have to sort of plan it and make a thing out of it, and like, oh, let's meet up here and go here and do this, whatever, for a couple of hours. There was like people could just kind of drop in and just hang out for half an hour, and then they sort of bugger off, and that's fine. And it's great, like socially, like I constantly have friends coming in. I'm chatting to people every day, and oftentimes we would have people sort of coming in, sort of towards the end of the day, and go, oh, let's go and grab a pint. And we would go out for a couple of drinks. And this is the case as well. Like even like when people say they were not friendly, like the amount of times I've taken out complete strangers and gone, let's go and have food. Let's go and grab a couple of beers, whatever. So it's not like we were not friendly. It's just sometimes that they were not always making or trying to be friendly as well.
Yeah,
it was a two-way street, and I think a lot of people sort of missed that. So yeah.
Well, here's a question, Dan. I want to ask you one more question, which is, what's next for you? I know that you don't really have any burning desire to be a performer, and that's absolutely fine. But obviously, I know, because I'm a huge fan of your material, you're an incredible creator. And, I know you love magic, and you've been around the magic community, your whole life. What are your plans moving forward? Do you have any goals on your magical bucket list that you'd like to achieve? Would you like to go back into demonstrating again in the future? Are you going to be releasing more magic in the future? Are there any what's your future plans?
To some extent I wish I knew as well, but in a more kind of vague sense. I mean, there's certainly things that I still want to release. I mean, there's always been a constant joke with me and my friend Dan. When I come up with something, it was always like, oh yes, there's another one for the book, because I have this sort of mythical book that may never appear, but literally I have like thousands and thousands of pages of notes. I mean, I did compile like these are some of the more fleshed out ideas that I've actually sort of written up, even as sort of ebooks that haven't been released, and just compiling those was around 3,000 A4 pages or something like that. So there's certainly material out there. Is all of it good? No, not at all. But maybe one day I'll get off my arse and sort of pick the good ones, make it into a little book. I've spoken to a couple of people about it. and so either some sort of book or maybe a DVD with a couple of things. Book is my preference because it appeals to me, and just the way I love learning magic is through books, and it's something that just feels a bit more permanent than a DVD. I mean, DVDs don't really exist these days. So yeah, so it's going to be some sort of book probably. Yeah. I'm guessing. And like, performance hasn't been my main thing. I've always sort of done it to some extent or another. And in this last 2 years, like not being in Davenports. So yes, I'm just a shop demonstrator, but that's still kind of scratching that itch of doing some performance. And now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, there's none of that. I'm not around magicians anymore. So now I just feel a bit lonely. So I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I should join the circle, you know, maybe put out some book or DVD or individual tricks. I don't know yet. There's so many things I want to do in that respect. I mean, because I'm always trying to sort of be creative and trying to think of things. Like I said, like small things like turning the knives around the knife stand or whatever it happens to be. And it's always fun to just sort of tinker with things in that sense. They may not always, I mean, I think that's an important thing to know for people. It's like, you don't have to release things. Please just stop. There's no need. We have plenty of things. And the reason I only put out things, every 7 years or something, is because I don't think that all ideas need to be out there. Sometimes it's fun for me to have them, even if they're not worthy of a release or whatever. It's fine to just have them, know them. You can perform them sometimes. But these days it feels a little bit like people feel like you don't exist unless you put something out. Like, do you not have any downloads out? What's wrong with you? It's not. It's fine not to. I mean, I've seen so many stuff. And again, it's tying back into Davenport. So I've seen so many things that, like, mate, you need to research a bit more, maybe, like know a bit more about magic. Because some people have been in it for a year, they don't know. I know it feels like you know what you're talking about because you've learned a bunch of tricks, so now you know things. And here's my trick, but you don't know everything else, all the good stuff. I mean, and there's no one can ever know everything, but you need to read more, you need to study more to be able to kind of release things, I think. Or not to be able to, anyone is able to, but for it to warrant a release. Like one classic story is a friend of mine. I didn't really know him at the time, but he was new into magic. He's been doing it for like 6 months or something. And then he goes, oh yeah, I have a new trick down. Can I show it to you? So yeah, of course, yeah, show me, bring it on. He does it, and it's like, yeah, but that's kind of like this trick, but with a much worse handling. And obviously you have to be a little bit more gentle and not just say that's shit. Although that's internally what I'm saying is like that's shit. But it's like, yeah, if you have studied more, you would know that that's not a new sort of plot at all, and there are far better solutions to it. But so I said that in as gentle way as I possibly could, and then he went, "Oh, but I haven't seen it on YouTube." Yeah, no, maybe not on YouTube, but you have to understand that magic exists outside of YouTube. And there's always been like and I know this is on YouTube as well, but I think what a lot of people need to sort of understand, and for me as well, I need to understand that times are moving forward, and YouTube is a viable learning medium. I mean, I learned, like, if I need to change like a plug socket or whatever, although I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't recommend it, but I could probably Google that and learn how to do it. I can do it. Yeah. And that's how people do things these days. People don't go to the library. They go to YouTube or Google, whatever, and then they find things. So you can learn that way, but I think it's very important to realize very quickly you're not an electrician just because you watched a video on how to change a plug socket on YouTube. And I think that's an important sort of distinction. And I think people like certainly younger people, because that is all the, like for them, that is a big part of it, like social media and all that aspect. And I think sometimes they get a little bit lost in thinking that is it, not realizing there's all this outside, all this big world. And it was a thing that I remember. I don't think it's a quote. It might as well have been a meme. I have no idea. But someone wrote somewhere on the internet that you can Google anything and you will get a million answers in 1 second. But if you go to a library and ask a librarian, you get the right answer.
I love that.
And I think that sort of applies to magic as well to some extent. That yes, you can Google tricks and you can learn a million different tricks online, and this is the same thing. Like with magic shops online, it's harder for them to sort of foster that sort of relationship with customers, of having that thing like, oh, yeah, I know you bought this last time, so I think this will be for you. They might say, oh, I want this one. I don't think so. They think this will be better. You can sort of guide them more. When it becomes online shops, it becomes less personal.
Yeah.
And you don't have that librarian that tells you the right answer. You just have the Google answer of a million different things. And it's vast. It's a lot of things out there.
There's a lot
and trying to find the right way is very difficult. And I think that for young people these days, because it's all online, but I think it's important to trying to find, I think, and like a magic club or something, or like some sort of social thing, not just online, because you get sort of stuck in this frame. I got this, and I'm doing magic tricks here. This is where all the moves are happening, which is not how it works in the real world. If I'm doing the pass here, this is like super awkward. Whereas in the real world, you might gesture as you're moving or something, but the problem is that everyone seems stuck in this. So I think it's important to get out in the real world and meet real people. And I know the magic clubs have got a bit of a bad rep at the moment. I know you made some videos about them. They need to change, and I agree. They need to attract a lot more younger people.
Yeah,
but I think that's where the magic clubs figure out. I mean, like I said, I'm a member of one, and we certainly haven't figured it out. Because the easy answer is, yeah, you can just be online, share some videos online. That's fine. And I guess, like, I mean, if that is it, then fine. But you'll soon realize if you try to go out in the real world and perform those things, you'll suffer.
Yeah.
But if all you want to do with magic is chat with people like this on Zoom or whatever platform, and do tricks in this sort of frame, then fine, go for it. But that's not the real world.
No.
But it doesn't make it any less valid. But it is what it is.
I completely agree with everything you've said there, and you know that my views and your views on this subject are very much alike. I think the best thing that you've said there is you don't have to release magic tricks. No. You don't have to be, because there's so many people that do. I've talked about it. People come into the industry as new magicians, and we put the creators of tricks on pedestals, and they look up at them and they're like, well, I want to be that guy.
Yeah, I don't blame them for that. Of course you do.
Yeah.
You listen to like some rock band or whatever, you imagine like being on stage, like rocking it out in front of thousands of people. Doesn't mean that you probably should. If you can only play like 3 or 4 chords on the guitar, probably not for you. But we do that in other aspects of life. I think we have more of a sort of control on those things. Like, yeah, I won't book a big gig in front of thousands of people when I can't play the guitar or sing, as much as I like to think that I can. But you wouldn't do that. But magicians do, and I find it really bizarre. I understand where it comes from, but I think that there's some people just need to sort of stay with it for a bit longer and just take the time, because it's not a race. Yeah. We'll all get there in the end, wherever we need to be. But yeah, we can't just expect to be on the top from the moment we start in magic. Yeah, and I think it's important to do your sort of not research, that's the wrong word, but knowing the history. And I think a lot of that has been lost, like recently more so. I think maybe with the advent of like smartphones and stuff like that, you don't have to know anything anymore, because you just go, boop, 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 oh, that's the answer.
Yeah.
You don't have to understand things or know where things come from. So, for example, I'm massively into hip hop music, for example, and I see this with a lot with hip hop music, and I'm sure it goes on with other genres as well. But with hip hop music, I get a lot of the new guys, and they supposedly sell a lot of streams, or however they measure them. I don't know. But some of them are like, yeah, I don't really know any like Tupac songs. Well, I mean, you may not listen to Tupac, but if that is your thing, like hip hop is my thing, rapping, and you don't really know anything about Tupac, it's like being in card magic and I don't know, never read Card College, I don't know, whatever, or knowing like double lifts or something. And that's the thing. Like I think it's the what's it called, Dunning-Kruger thing of like overestimating your own ability.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of that as well. That seems to be going on. I don't know what it is. I think that something has sort of switched, or maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe it's just me getting old. It could be that. But people seem to overestimate their abilities based on a very limited sort of knowledge base. So like, again, being in Davenports and you would ask someone, what, when they ask for something, and you go, oh, well, what was your skill level? I mean, intermediate to advanced. And you go, oh, okay. In the beginning, I believed them. I quickly realized that when they say intermediate to advanced, they mean that they can do a double lift and double undercut. That's about it. That's not intermediate or advanced.
Nope.
I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, and this is the thing, like you only know what you know. So within that little bubble, you might well be advanced, who knows? But like, I have been exposed to a lot of magic. I've been into it for well over 30 years. I know that I'm just about average in comparison to people. Like when you see some other people out there, you're going, oh shit, they are like a million miles better than me. So where does that put me on the scale? I'm certainly not advanced up in their level. So I've got to be down here on intermediate at best. And that's me doing it for 30 years. Maybe I'm thick and maybe I'm slow. I don't know, but I don't think so. But I think the people need to sort of understand the scale. But people tend to get caught in that weird little bubble.
They do. No, I think you're right. And I hope that people that have listened to this interview, and I know this is going to be a very popular interview because I know the amount of people that have asked me to interview you. And genuinely, seriously, you are, and I think that
they need to get a life.
Well, I hope that they listen.
Oh, yes, give me a ring. I mean, I'm lonely. Come on, I'm around. I'll have a chat with you.
Hey, well, you know what, Dan? If I was opening up a magic company that needed a magic demonstrator, I would be on the phone to you in a heartbeat. Because you are great. You really are. You are great. And I know you say that you're not 100% sure where the future goes.
No, I mean, I don't know. I'm getting off on tangents, but I kind of feel like I'm not performing anymore. Having that, I'm not scratching that itch, as it were. And so I have been sort of contemplating going back into performing, to some extent or another. But it has to be sort of on my terms. I don't want to do walk around, mix and mingle stuff. I know a lot of people do that, and they're very successful at it. I know you do it. And it's great. It's not what I want. It's not my sort of artistic vision of magic or what it should be. For me, like being on stage, also not quite right. I think the best medium or the best size of an audience is more of a kind of a parlor show. So looking at an audience of up to like 50 people tops kind of thing.
Yeah, Laura London's been doing these intimate close-up shows in London recently.
Yeah, I went to see one of them. It was fantastic. She's great, obviously. But that's sort of the size that I think is best for some of the magic. Because you're walking around, you have so many limitations, like pocket space, and does it reset? Does it do that? And so many things. And it's not that you can't do it, but you have a lot of restrictions purely just based on your performance conditions, which makes it a lot harder. And you can't quite do all the bits you would like to do. like these days, because I'm not really in front of anyone, so if I'm doing something, it requires a full deck stack and it gets shuffled at the end. I don't care. It doesn't bother me because I don't have to reset it for the next table.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't fit with what I want to do. As I want to do a little bit more. So, like I said, kind of parlor, but more kind of theatrical, I guess. I've been speaking to my good friend Matthew Sear, who's he used to be a magician, but is now more of a theatre director. We both have a similar kind of vision of what we would like a magic show to be. And it is not important for me whether or not I am the star necessarily. I would just like to be involved with it. I think that's more important than stroking my ego. That doesn't bother me. But trying to bring a bit more sort of theatricality into it, rather than just, oh, your card is on top, which is great for that kind of bite-sized bit of entertainment at a wedding, whatever, because you're not the reason they are there. You're there as a bit of entertainment whilst they're doing the wedding photos or whatever it happens to be. But I want to bring some bit more sort of theatricality to it. Because, like I said, because he is now from more of a theatre background, and me more so from magic, but in trying to do something a bit sort of mixed in between, like calling it more of like an immersive theatre experience with magic. Yeah, is probably more accurate. So I know we've been talking about that, not as much as we should, but it's something that might happen at some point.
Well, that would be great.
Because I think like it was a quote that sort of stuck with me by Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, that the aim of art is not to represent the outward things, but the significance of the inward things. And I think a lot of magic is just the outward things. It's just that moment, and like with theatre, it often is just representing what it is. It doesn't go deep. It doesn't really resonate like who you are as a person. Like, how much do people know about Craig the human after seeing an ambitious card sequence? And it's not taking anything away from you doing ambitious card. I'm sure they're perfectly happy with it. But on some artistic level, they don't really know who you are.
No.
They know you're good fun, having a laugh, whatever. And that's all they need to know in that setting. But I think that if you are doing it in a more theatrical setting, I think there should be something more to it. It can't just be, ta-da, here's the word you thought of, here's your card. It has to be something more, and it needs to tell more of a personal story. I mean, I dare anyone who has watched Derek DelGaudio's show in and of itself to say that they were not moved by that. I mean, anyone who's seen it will go, fuck me, that's the best show ever. The full stop, not even magic, just a show.
Yeah.
End of. And obviously we can't all do that show, and that is like, I think that's sort of the benchmark, the bar that he's set now. And I think that we should at least try to get up there a bit, and try to move beyond the sort of the trite kind of things of like, write something down, now I reveal it, here it is. Ta-da! And I think you need something more. I don't know what that is. I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's got to be there somewhere. And that's sort of where I'm at the moment of trying to figure out what that is. Like, what is my exact artistic vision? Because if I don't know it, how am I going to create a show that is that?
Yeah.
So that's what, like, the time since Davenports has sort of given me a lot of free time, unfortunately. But fortunately, in the respect that it has given me time to kind of rethink a lot of the stuff that I think about magic. I mean, I'm more or less completely fallen out with mentalism, because I think it's somewhat delusional, which some people will probably take. Well, they will probably have some issues with that.
Okay.
But I think that
elaborate. Of course, you know. Can we?
Oh, I just like to say that, like, all mentalists are shit, and just leave it at that.
That'd be a great enigmatic ending to the interview, wouldn't it?
No, but and don't get me wrong, like mentalism has been my passion, but lately I've sort of moved away from it. But it's always been a great passion of mine. But I think that he's sort of lost the plot a bit of like, it's all about like, how do I come across as real? I have to come across as real. That's very important. Real. I'm going to be real. Everyone has to believe me. And it's fine to do that again. And this ties back into the context that I want to do a show in, because there will certainly be some mentalism in there, but it's in a very theatrical kind of context. It's not just me walking up to someone at a party or even socially being in a pub and going, I have mind reading powers. You're a fucking adult. You're asking people to believe that you have superpowers? Are you some sort of child? Like, children like to play that they have superpowers and they can fly or whatever. Even children don't ask other people to necessarily believe in it. But and I think that's what happened with a lot of mentalism. It's become that has become more important than actually delivering a good show and being entertaining. And it sort of lost the focus, I think, a bit.
I totally agree with you. I said on the channel a few weeks ago now, I said that my character as a performer is that of somebody who doesn't want people to believe it's real. I'm just doing something that I've spent a long time doing and practicing, and I'm going to cheat you with a smile on my face. That's kind of my approach to magic. At no point do I want people to think that I have real powers, because if I had real powers, I would not be in a grotty pub at midnight making a card jump to the top of the deck. I would not be at this corporate event sweating my tits off, making a coin jump from here to here. I would be doing something far more profound. And I said that, and so many people were like, "Oh, as a performer, you need people to believe that it's real the whole time, and that you can."
I mean, it's a difficult thing.
My audiences with some intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing. Like, because and so many people will say that magicians that don't treat it with the reverence that they think is necessary are trivializing the art. And yeah, maybe there is something to that. I don't know. But when it's fine to do whatever you want in a theatrical context, but you walking around a corporate event is not a theatrical context. Or you being in the pub with your friends and you bump into someone you don't know and you try to sell this thing as real, that's not a theatrical context. And you are trying to sort of foist upon them this notion that you somehow have some special abilities. It's a bit like a child thing saying like, oh, I'm invisible now, play along. And what, like people are supposed to go, oh yeah, you're invisible. Oh. They know it's not real.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent the pursuit of making it real, which sort of led to the whole psychological approach, which is a bit more palatable, which is equally false, but I think that sort of pursuit of not lying to your audience in that sort of sense has sort of kind of got mentalism a bit off track, I think. Yeah. And I know a lot of people will say that I'm trivializing the art by not doing it like it should be done, blah, 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 whatever. The fact of the matter is people want entertainment, you're not entertaining them. By the 15th envelope you're opening and going, ta-da! It's not entertaining, mate. Just, And I know that sometimes by making it more entertaining, it becomes less serious. And I think that the sort of the balance you need to sort of find of obviously not just trivializing it or not treating it as if it isn't important. It is perfectly fine to do that within the performance, but not, you have to understand when you're not performing, you don't have special powers. Yeah. I mean, unless you think you do, but I mean, that's up to you. But so I have some issues with that. So I sort of fell out with mentalism a lot over that, I think, of finding a way of presenting, because I used to do that stuff. I used to be in bars and whatever and chat to people and pretend that I have psychic powers or whatever, you know. I used to do a lot of spoon bending, for example. That was my thing. I used to be known, like in my hometown, for doing spoon bending. I was around someone's house. They'd go, oh, you're the guy who bends spoons. I would, bend the spoons. There is no spoon. Or, you know, whatever. All of that. I did all of that. but is that really what you want people to think? What do you think they think of you when you're not there? Like, do they think that I met this really weird guy, he had psychic powers, or do they think that I met a really weird guy that likes to pretend he has superpowers and wants everyone to play along and believe it? I don't know. You mean it could be both,
I was at a gig. I was at a party the other day, and there was a magician there. What was he like? I was completely deluded. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Laura, you mentioned Laura. Laura said the same thing when I interviewed her. She said one of her pet hates is magicians thinking or performers trying to pretend that it's real.
Yeah. I think that's getting in the way of creating a more profound experience than if it was actually real. Like, again, like watch Derek Delgadio. I mean, first of all, like, does he do tricks? I don't know. It doesn't even feel like he's doing tricks, really. He does some card dealing, but other than that, it's just these beautiful moments, magical sort of moments, but it's no like pretending it's real or like trying to sell it to people, trying to justify yourself. It's just like, here it is, kind of thing. And you deal with it, you take away from it whatever you will. That's up to you. And I think that's, yeah, I mean, I have plenty of mentalism friends. They'll probably hate me for saying all of that, but sometimes they're so up to their own, like thinking about, oh, how do I come across as real? I don't want to say this because then people don't think it's actually real. And so I think the sort of getting off track rather than creating a profound theatrical moment of weirdness, they're trying to create a very real thing that is mildly amusing with something written or something in an envelope, kind of thing. That's sort of my impression of mentalism these days. Here, take a card, write down the first kiss you've ever had. Okay, great. It's Sarah. That's it. Okay, now next person, write something down on this piece of paper. That's it. It's a lot of that. It's never creating any sort of theatricality around it, I think.
Right, there are mentalists that are trying to do that, though.
Oh, no, for sure. Don't get me wrong.
Like, I'll tell you somebody who I interviewed recently that I thought was doing a great, Chris Cox.
Yeah, Chris Cox is great, yeah. I mean, you know, he would be the first one to say, like, I saw one of his early shows in London and some 15, 16, 17 years ago, whatever it was, back in 2003. And I think he himself, because I was chatting to him over email. I don't know him these days by any means. I don't keep in touch with him. But he would be the first one to say he was envelope city. There was just fucking envelopes everywhere. So here's another prediction. But that's a great thing, I think, about him. He's seen that for what it was. He knew, even at that point, going like, yes, envelope city. It's just envelopes everywhere. Like, maybe try to get away from that. He does this beautiful thing with the, I don't know if he does it on stage these days, but with the changing rooms and different things, all of that kind of stuff, and just bringing it away, taking it away from little bits of paper and me just telling you what you wrote down, but to create a more interesting experience.
Yes,
and I think that's important. I think that's missing, but
absolutely. Well, this interview went very deep, very quickly, didn't it? I mean, which is good. I mean, and it's.
I haven't even started yet. I mean, it's all the other things I want to talk about that makes me angry. But
please feel free to use this as a soapbox. I'm more than happy to do that. That's not wrong at all.
Okay. No, but I think it was something that we talked about before, and I was saying about like magicians aren't very good customers of magic. They just tend to buy the latest and greatest thing, and I think that people need to take a step back. And I think that this comes again with all the social media and whatever. You see a cool video and then they buy it, thinking, "Oh, this is amazing! I've got to have it." The most recent one that really sort of annoyed me was Switch One by Christian Grace.
Yes,
which I think is a fantastic product. I knew from like even having heard some rumors about it from previous Blackpool when it was released. I saw the trailer. I went, yeah, I know what that is. And then seeing all of the people online that were outraged by this because they thought there was some magical switching gimmick thing that does the switch.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is this just because you haven't been sort of exposed to good sleight of hand? Because they're so used to seeing crap sleight of hand from the Magic Club or whatever, I don't know. And the fact that they couldn't spot it because Chris does it so well that they thought, oh, it must be a secret thing that does it.
Well, I think that, I think that these days people are looking, rightfully or wrongly, they're looking for the easiest option. Not always. I don't want to paint everyone, but
oh no, of course, yeah.
I know from looking at the comments, we get hundreds of comments on this channel, especially when a review show goes up or something like that. And I know that a lot of people are looking for, they don't want a sleight of hand technique. They don't want to improve their sleight of hand or anything like that. What they want is they want a clever little toy, a nice little gimmick that can achieve something so they don't have to put much practice in, so they can throw it. So, you know, it's like
I fucking tenure. If that's what you want.
Yeah, right. I've lost count of the amount of times that somebody will comment on a review show and they'll say, oh, this trick looks good. I've got a gig in 2 days' time. If I buy it, will I be able to do it? No, you won't. No, you shouldn't. You never should.
No, you should. Whether you can or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Should you? No, you shouldn't.
No.
But I find that a lot, and it's weird, and we got that a lot in the shop as well, of people seeing videos of things, but they don't really tend to apply any sort of critical thinking to it. So, and I've had this argument, I don't want to drag Switch One into this, I've had countless of arguments online. But what do you expect it to do? Do you expect the thing that finds the other card, the correct card somehow, loads it into a thing that comes out and like some Black Widow thing from Paul Harris Presents, or some weird pulley system with mechanical things that comes out and steals? Is that what you're expecting? And why are you not happy to find out that's not the case? Do you learn like, yeah, this is the skill I can learn? What happened with that? What happened with learning a skill? That's the joy of Magic, of learning. Like, if I could juggle 7 clubs within the first attempt, what's the point? It's no fun. The sense of achievement when you learn how to juggle 3 clubs and 4 clubs, whatever it is, I don't know the progression of those things, but that is part of the journey, and I think that is important. And I think that's sort of been lost a bit. And the fact that people don't like to think, and I think it might even tie back again to what I said before about just Googling things. Like, you just find out the answer. I don't have to know things, I just find it out. And because people don't like to apply thinking to things, that means that we end up in this situation. And look at all these second-hand groups, with all the people going, like, oh yeah, I bought this, it's not for me. What more do you want? You had a video. You had like 10 pages on the Magic Cafe explaining pretty much exactly what it is. You bought it and you're saying, oh, it's not for me. What more information do you need?
Yeah.
I mean, they pretty much blatantly told you what the method is, and you're still thinking, yeah, it's not for me. And it's just because you don't want to practice.
And that's what it is. Ultimately, that's what it is. Magicians are
like, it wasn't magic.
Because ultimately, when you think about it, Switch One is probably the closest thing you can get to a commercial close-up product. It takes up very little pocket space. You can give somebody a completely free choice of any card. You can put that down on the table or in their hands from the very, very beginning before you even do anything. You can have them name a card very, very freely. And then you can just literally pick up that card, show it's changed. And from a reset point of view, it's a 3-second reset to put it back away. Like, it's the perfect commercial close-up trick. Like, he's created the perfect commercial. It doesn't take too long. You can apply it to different things. It's great. You can use a playing card. Yeah, it's amazing. And anybody who buys it and then sells it, it's really ultimately, you know, they might say it's not, but it's down to the fact that it's not what they wanted. They didn't want to put the practice in to get the switch right.
It wasn't the method they wanted. And I think that, again, that's the thing as well, like with Magic, is some methods aren't easy. I mean, Switch One arguably isn't that difficult. I mean, I got the switch down in a couple of minutes, just fiddling with it. Not perfect, not like Christian, but still, like, yeah, I got the mechanics of that down. my intended use for it is not with the playing cards, is with fewer options. Still using the same sort of gimmick for it, but not using playing cards. So I have nothing against that, but that's not what I had in mind for it. And so even that's become a lot easier, admittedly, with like 12 options or whatever it is that I'm going to need, rather than 26. So yeah, you need to practice it. But that's what you're saying. You've seen the video, you like the effect of it. What you're saying by selling it is saying, I don't like the method of it. But you can achieve exactly what Christian does on that video. He's not lying. I mean, in some instances, there is a lot of lying. Like if you remember, like Sans Minds, for example, they've released a lot of products that were questionable. There were things, certain details that were omitted or whatever, but here you get a full performance. You can see exactly what it is. Do you like that? Yes. This is how you do it. Oh, I don't like that. Do you mean you don't like practice? Why that annoys me, like why people don't want to practice. And even going back to things like basic sleight of hand things, people go, it's good enough, I'll get away with it. But why do you stop there? It was like in a conversation I had with my friend Shane Cobalt from Canada. We were talking in Davenport, we were talking about like a double lift or whatever. And I said, yeah, I mean, often I just do the pinky counts to sort of get into position. It's like, okay. But do you think that in theory, a push-off double lift would look better? Yeah, yes. I mean, it would just look like you're pushing over, can't you do that? That's what it would look like. So is that not better than having to do the get ready? It's like, well, yeah, no, it is better. Then why don't you do that? Why isn't that your preferred method? Why don't you practice towards that? And we can't all be perfect. We can't all master every single slide. And yes, push-off double lifts are not as easy as other methods. But why don't we want to strive for that? And too often people just go, it's all right. I just kind of do this thing and then just get my double lift like this or whatever. But why? Why do you settle for that? And then we're complaining that we're not considered an art form.
I can relate to that because I've just recently perfected the strike double after years of getting a break the traditional way. And for me, I'll tell you why I did it. The reason I always knew a strike double would look better. But for me, I was a busy working pro. I was doing 10 or 15 gigs a week and running a business. And there was always something more important. I never had anyone call my double lift out and go, actually, that's rubbish. But I had marketing to do. I had admin to do. I had this to do. I had that to do. Whatever it may be. There were certain priorities in terms of learning magic, and improving my double lift wasn't there. The reason I eventually spent probably 6 months practicing and nailing a strike double is because when I started doing magic TV, well, now I'm performing this double lift on camera, where there's no misdirection. And I was getting magicians go, I can see you'll get ready with your double lift. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, but you start going.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is now my performing environment. If this has become another performing environment for me, I have to do the best possible job I can do when performing on that environment. And that's going to necessitate me learning this particular move. So it's kind of like, for me, I knew it would be better, but there were other priorities. But when I realized that it was something that was important for me to do in order to help in the environment I was performing for, that's when I actually kind of jumped in and learned it.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well. Like, I know on some forums I'm a member of, the Magicians Forum, for example, I've had a go at people for doing stupid double lifts and other things. And I'm by no means sort of that sort of elitist about things. Like, yes, you get away with it. And people probably don't know they don't know any better. But I think it's important to give them the best that you can do. And like in your instance, for example, you just don't have time. And if you do get away with it, fine. But when you do get a moment to actually sit down and practice these things, and I think it's important just to give them a better exposure, because they haven't been exposed to magic. Almost no one has in the grand scheme of things. Haven't seen close-up magic, or certainly not good close-up magic. And So we need to, I think they need to sort of be educated to some extent. So yeah, they don't say anything. It's quite frankly, half of the time they want you to be out of the way and go back to the conversation.
Yeah.
You so rudely interrupted. They don't give a shit about your double lift. No. But that's what I mean. Like, I think it's taking some sort of pride in your work more than anything. Mm. It's not necessarily that you won't fool people, but it's about taking pride in it.
And looking back now, obviously now when I'm going to gigs, I'm using like double because I have the ability to. And I feel so much more confident doing that. I feel like, do you know what I mean? I feel like it's a better tool to use. Looking back, I probably should have learned it a long time ago.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I mean, I have plenty of things like that I have sort of revisited and going, yeah, I get away with this, fine. But I'm like, well, I am aware of better ways of doing it. Why am I not doing it?
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be that, like, yeah, it's difficult. It's beyond my skill set. And that's fine. Just do the other method for now, because it will be fine. But at least try to work towards something better. Because that's the thing, like, we haven't actually touched upon this at all, but I love cooking, for example. It's my other sort of hobby these days. I'm cooking lots of food. And like, it's all well and good to oversalt your meat when you're cooking it at home, but you wouldn't work in a restaurant and oversalt the meat.
No.
I mean, yeah, sure, some customers might not complain because it's a bit awkward or whatever, but it might still taste and go, oh, this is a bit salty. We wouldn't accept that in any other sort of walk of life. Like, oh, I'm a joiner, I'm just putting up these things, or a plumber who does plumbing. Yeah, it leaks a bit, but it's okay. I mean, most of the water gets out. It's just a little bit of a leak. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't accept subpar craftsmanship in any other sort of walk.
No.
Or you wouldn't be particularly successful.
No.
We're lucky in the sense that with magic, a lot of people don't know what successful or good magic is, as we sort of get away with it. But that shouldn't be our reason not to practice. When people say, like, yeah, that's fine, I get away with it though. No one has ever said anything. Because they're polite. Most people don't want to bring that up, and they might not necessarily, and this ties back to a lot of the Spanish school of things, or like the feeling of things. So even though they might not understand what I'm doing, say this, trying to get a double lift or whatever, they may not understand what's going on, or sort of conceptually, but they feel that something is off. They're like, oh, something's a bit weird there. And I think that is a lot of the thing as well, though, of like sometimes you're doing the technique either wrongly or not a particularly good technique, doing it at the wrong time, all of these things, you don't have the justification, all of those kind of things ties into it. So it's far more than just the getting your finger underneath two cards or turning over two cards. It's far more than that. And I think, again, that's sort of lost on a lot of people, especially with this whole YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, all of these things. I think some of that is lost as well. I mean, I've had people, when I've asked them, what kind of tricks do you do when you walk around? Yeah, I do like a diagonal palm shift, I'll do like a force, a double lift maybe. What tricks are those? They are methods for a trick, not the trick itself. But the way it's often portrayed on social media is like, here, check out my diagonal palm shift. I can't do it, but here, check it out. I'm just gonna, whoop. Oh, no, it's in my palm. That's not a trick, though. That's just you performing a technique. And like, yeah, you do it well, but it doesn't matter. So I think that's sort of lost a bit. And then people get too focused on techniques. And again, I think this is not as prevalent in the Spanish school of close-up magic. Mm-hmm. I was in Madrid with a couple of friends of mine, Fernando and Ricardo. We were having some lunch, and we were talking about magic, and they were saying that, yeah, like with like English magic, I think they were specifically saying Scottish magic, but English would work as well. Just because there are some Scottish people that are very much into the heavy sleight of hand stuff. And they said, like, so if your magic trick is getting from A to B, and there's a wall here in the middle, English magicians just try to punch their way through there with brute force, like sleight of hand, trying to get to this point.
Mm.
Spanish people, they would just walk around
it. Yeah.
And I feel that's often the case. It's like sometimes like English, or specifically more so Scottish, but English as well, is very heavy on the sleight of hand. And there's nothing wrong with that, just to play around with, but sometimes that's not the best solution to it. And so using the diagonal palm shift, whatever, because you've learned it, isn't the best method of getting to where you want to be. There might be a way of walking around the hurdle rather than punching your way through it. And we're so sort of locked into different techniques sometimes that it's difficult to kind of get away from it, because we've learned this difficult thing. So now we want to do it. And so because this trick that I learned is requiring this method, so that's what I'm going to do, rather than, like I said, going around it. As an example, for example, if I had a deck of cards again and it's down on the table, I know you can't see it, but it's irrelevant. And I know I need to get 2 cards from the top. I need a double lift. Most people will pick it up, take the double, put the deck down again. But why don't you just pick up a double straight from the deck that's on the table? Because why are you picking it up just to take 2 cards and putting it back down again? Because in theory, what you're doing is picking up 1 card from the deck.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go, I'm going to put it in this hand? Oh, yes, here we go. Here's 1 card. That's not what you would do realistically. And it's having the right tools in your toolbox. And that particular example is from a guy called Ray J from the Magicians Forum. He was making that example when we were talking about using the right tools for the right moments. And it perfectly sort of encapsulates it. That so many magicians get trapped into, like, I needed 2 cards from the deck, so I'm going to do my double lift, take it, rather than going, well, if the deck is on the table, why don't I just go over, pick up 2 cards, and that's it? Yeah. Why do you sort of fuck about with it?
Because people learn. There's 2 reasons, I think. Because one, people only have a limited knowledge of moves. They learn a double lift, a force, a control, and then they kind of want to learn tricks at that point and won't try and learn more moves. And then secondly, because the table double lift is not an easy move to do every single time, and it requires practice that a lot of people don't want to put in. Yeah,
and exactly. And I mean, again, this ties back to that, like the practice part of things. Like the amount of time I've spent just practicing a double lift is far more than I spent learning arrows and stack or whatever. I learned arrows and stack in a few days, whatever it was. That didn't take much time. I spent far more time learning double lift, but people still keep saying learning a stack is too difficult. It's too difficult. You just put in some time. Like I said before, it's not a race getting anywhere. Just take the time it requires to learn it, and off you go. I don't know why they want to sort of, it's the easy option all the time, but it's still forgetting sometimes that they have put in a lot of the work early on. Like even like learning like a card spring or whatever. They probably spend a long time learning that before the cards actually landed in the hand, before they flew out everywhere. But they spend a lot of time doing that, but then to find something now, it's like, oh, that's too difficult, can't be bothered. Move on. And again, I think that again becomes more of a cultural thing, or like societal thing these days, with people's attention span.
Yeah. I
mean, even I struggle sometimes these days to just sit down and read a magic book. I don't have the same patience for it as I used to. So I would have to take it like 1 trick at a time. I would read 1 trick, learn it. I won't read anything else in that book for a few days, and then I might go back to it, that kind of stuff. Rather than like whereas back in the day, we just sit there reading every single page, learning everything. Because I think we've lost a little bit of that kind of patience with things because things move a lot faster.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going on so many tangents here, but this brings me back to music again. The way we used to listen to music, like you would remember going to the record shop and picking out a CD and can't wait to get home to listen to this. And you would sit on the bus, you might open it, read a little booklet inside, maybe reading the lyrics or whatever it is. And then these days we're go on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and you press play. Nah, I don't like it. Next one, next one, next one. No, I paid for that CD. I had to listen to it for like a couple of months before I could afford buying a new CD. I would know like all of the lyrics by heart. I would know how long the songs are. I would know who produced it, everything about every single song on that album. And then I would move on. Whereas these days, you just go, nah, I don't like that track. Skip, 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 skip. And there's a lot of that. And I think Magic has become a bit of that as well.
So do you think it's a lack of appreciation?
I think so. I think so. And I don't know where the lack of appreciation itself comes from, but I think there is certainly a prevalence of
so much, like using your music analogy, you know, because of Spotify, and you've basically got access to every single song in the world. It's like you don't give things enough chance. It's like no. You don't.
You didn't grab me within 5 seconds. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, you're spending your £10 a month. You're not spending your £15 on your album, and you're going to listen to it because you've spent £15 on it, and you want to listen to every single track. You know, you don't appreciate that album anymore because it's you know, you've got access to absolutely everything. Maybe with Magic, there's so many downloads, there's so many options for people to buy Magic inexpensively, and that doesn't even take into consideration things like YouTube and so many different places that you can get access to almost anything immediately.
Absolutely.
Maybe people don't appreciate something like Switch One because it's just one trick amongst a million other tricks.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a part of that is very much true. I think, like me growing up, I got a Magic book. There weren't any other Magic books around that I could find in a bookshop local. So I had that one book, and I would learn every single trick in it. One of my first one was Peter Eldon's Book of Magic, or whatever the English title is. It had different title in Swedish, but fantastic book. It had lots of different tricks, but I would learn every single one of them because I didn't have anything else to learn. Like, what else am I going to do? And then I was, a new Magic book. So many tricks. And I would learn every single trick in that book, which gives you a lot wider sort of knowledge base. And it makes you appreciate things a lot more. Like back in the day, you would have to go to the library. These days, go on YouTube. There isn't a part of there isn't that sort of sacrifice of your time and effort involved in anything anymore. I mean, I miss the days of Blockbuster. You meet up with your mates, go down to Blockbuster, finding a right movie, buying some sweets, going back to the flat, have a watch. There was a whole event. It was a thing. And now I sit here watching. Watch 5 minutes of that movie. I can't be bothered. Switch to something else. And I think we sort of got trapped in that sort of mentality. And I think that does affect Magic as well. Magic is not exempt from this. I think this permeates everything, all of our lives at the moment, and Magic is no exception. So that's what I mean. I wish that people would take more time and spend more time with things and try to practice things, try them out, try to understand why it works, why it doesn't work, play with it, tinker with it, rather than going, well, there has that move that I don't like that move. Next trick, move along. And more downloads, whereas you could buy books. I don't want to get into a book versus download debate. I mean, books clearly are superior. No debate. But I understand, it's not for everyone. As long as you don't say that I'm more of a visual learner. If you say that, just fuck off. You're just lazy. I mean, that's usually what it boils down to. I'm more of a visual learner. I mean, and no disrespect to people that do actually suffer from dyslexia, although they seem to be far more prevalent in London than I've ever encountered in any country, anywhere in the world. It just means that people don't get used to reading and learning to love how to read. And Magic is dry. Magic is boring to read. It's not the most exciting thing, like text-wise. But it's so much good information in books. And I can't emphasize that enough, that if you don't read Magic books for that reason, I think you're missing out a lot. And I see this a lot with specifically younger people that are getting into Magic that don't want to read. So that was my thing, like always in Davenports, was always recommending books to the kids. Parents loved it. But they're like, you'll get my kid reading. Fantastic. because it's not, they don't enjoy reading so much. They read like little short captions for a stupid cat picture or something. But getting people to read, and I think it enhances the way you learn things as well.
Yeah.
Because you have to read and understand the words, internalize it, sort of imagine it in your head somehow to make sense of it, what's happening. And I think it tends to stick better than just watching it, pressing play on a DVD, because you just press play and you sit there watching it. Okay, cool. That's it. You haven't really activated all sorts of different parts of your brain whilst learning it. And so I think it tends to just sort of disappear.
I agree. And the big problem, in my opinion, for people that just go with downloads and videos is they end up emulating the style of the performer in which they're looking at. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen a magician that opens up his act by he starts off as Daryl, then goes into Bill Malone, then goes into Mike Lamar, and then finishes off with Jay Sankey. And there's not any of him in it. It's just all these different performers. And, you know, I'm a big fan of books, as you know, and I remember reading one of Darwin Ortiz. I'm a big Darwin Ortiz fan. Reading one of his books and you
don't want to emulate him as a performer, that's for sure.
You absolutely wouldn't. No, but I'd never seen him perform. I was a huge fan of his books before I even saw him perform. And there was this routine that I did all of the time, and I remember watching him perform it for the first time and thinking, my presentation is so much better for that, you know, I really much prefer the way that I present it. But if I'd seen him on video, I probably would have tried to take that and make it my own, as opposed to create something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very important. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sort of emulating people to some extent when you are starting out, because you don't know what's good and what isn't. I mean, don't put on a Spanish accent just because you watch Daniel Ortiz or Woody Aragon or someone. Don't put on a Spanish accents, but it's fine to sort of emulate to some extent as you're trying to find your own way. But you have to quickly realize that that is not the end point. That's your training wheels. Move on from there as quickly as possible. But you can use that to get there.
Yeah.
But just don't stop there, which is what you see a lot with like people doing all the Michael Lamar's cheesy jokes from these Mastercard Miracle series or whatever. But please don't do those. Like, no, move on. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's the thing of learning in that medium is difficult, because it's hard to separate the magic from the performer. But I also think that eventually, once you start understanding who you are as a person, as a character, then there are certain plots or certain tricks that will probably gravitate towards you. And like certainly like with some tricks of mine, I don't think I published any of them, but they come completely from outside of magic. And the plot comes from outside of magic. And I'm then just applying whatever magical kind of things to that plot that I can find. And if you start doing that, I mean, I know they're not strictly my plots, but they're not within the magic industry, at least. So like some of my favorite books are The Holographic Universe, for example. It's a fantastic book. It's a sort of theoretical, philosophical kind of book, without going into too much details, but it's a fantastic book. And it's lots of interesting sort of concepts. So I was like, oh, these are interesting. How can I use these for creating magical tricks? And sometimes, yes, they do end up just being a trivial card trick, but it's okay. Doesn't matter. But at least you've sort of tried bringing something else in, something that interests you. Another one is like, what the bleep do we know? I can't remember who wrote that one, but it was a good book of lots of different sort of fringe theories. And there's a particularly Japanese scientist, Masaru Emoto, who wrote what's it called, The Intelligence of Water. They had some chapter in there, but it's how water, when frozen and crystallized, would retain certain emotions that were put into the water, like by labels on the water bottles or the water glass. And when frozen, it would then crystallize differently. And that's just the perfect plot. So I have the thing with 3 different shot glasses of just water, different emotions, that kind of stuff. But again, there's not something that anyone is really doing. So then once you start finding those things and bringing that into magic, then once you have on the magic side, you have all the tools, but then reading all the other stuff, they sort of meet somewhere in the middle, and you know how to apply things and finding the best way of doing things. So for example, in that routine, I have 3 water glasses. How do I know which one is which? If I had read 0 magic books, I don't know what I would do, but I have read plenty. So I would have like at least 10, 12 different methods for knowing what was what. Mm. And if you don't have that sort of background knowledge, then you will struggle. You'll hit a dead stop, like, oh, I don't know how. Or you might know one method, but it might not be suitable. It might not be the best method. But you think, well, that will get the job done. And you use that even though it's as an inferior method. Yeah. So yeah, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff. I always liken it to if you've ever sat in a sofa, you're very comfortable, you're sitting back, you drop something on the floor, and you're like trying to reach it, just really struggling, trying to reach that thing, and you're spending like forever, what feels like forever, trying to reach for the pen or whatever it is. And eventually it's like, oh yeah, I got it. But you realize like, well, I could have just, if I just sat up, I could have just grabbed the pen straight away. I wouldn't have spent 1 minute like trying to be on the floor, trying to crawl, trying to get this thing. By using a smarter method, we have a better result. So when you're trying to pick up something, I don't have any things here, but my headphones or whatever. So rather than trying to stretch for them, if I just stood up and just grabbed them, now I have my headphones. I didn't spend all of that unnecessary energy on something completely irrelevant. And I think that's what magical methods are like. Sometimes that we tend to get sort of on one track, and we unable to sort of step back and look at it from sort of the bigger picture. And that's often due to the fact that we have a limited knowledge base, and we don't have that many tools in the toolbox. So if you only have a hammer, that's all you can use. But whereas if you have a saw, a screwdriver, whatever, I don't know tools, but I know those 3. And then you can create something better if you have more tools. And that's what I mean of like taking a step back, finding like the best way of getting to a point. And sometimes it's not just hammering your way through it. Sometimes it's walking around it.
Absolutely, completely agree with you. And again, that brings us completely full circle back to earlier on when we talked about people creating magic and releasing and creating magic to the magic community when they haven't got a toolbox. Yeah. One of the reasons that some tricks that come out that are substandard is because you don't know everything, so you try to create something that either has been done before or it's a massively substandard method, but you don't know any better because you haven't read or learned. And I see people, I had an email just the other day from somebody, and he said, hi, I got into magic 6 months ago and this is my new release through Penguin, please can you review it?
Oh no, I mean, you don't want me to review it.
Yeah, you really don't want me to review that. I'm not going to. However, this is what you need to do. But it's that desire, isn't it? It's going back to that desire to be famous, I suppose it is more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's become more of a thing with the younger generation now. It's like when I know you're a few years older than me, but like when we were growing up, you didn't have celebrities that were famous for being famous. Nope. That's not a concept that existed. You can't just be, oh, I'm famous. And that has become more of a thing of becoming famous, becoming a YouTube star or whatever. Whatever that, some research that showed that more kids these days want to become a YouTube star than astronauts or doctors or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They want to become YouTubers.
Yeah.
That, for me, that's still a very foreign kind of concept. It's like, what is that? You sit at home making videos. It's a bit weird. Although, I mean, moving with the times, yes, it is a viable thing, but certainly in my mind, because I don't come from that, and I think back then, like back in the 80s, you were famous because you were good at something, and I think as time has sort of moved on, now everyone thinks that, well, you don't have a YouTube channel? What? You're nobody. And they sort of frown upon the fact that you have no sort of online presence. You don't have an Instagram account with 1 million followers or whatever. Those things don't mean anything if you don't have the skills to back it up. Mm. I mean, anyone can get followers or people looking at things if you make enough noise.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a good thing. If you don't have the skills to actually back it up, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's it's sort of fostered that kind of mentality. That, it doesn't matter. I don't have to be talented or good at this thing. I can just do it. That's the important thing, being out there.
Yeah.
And if we all want recognition for being a good magician or whatever, I'm not taking it away from them in that respect. We all want. I mean, some of my early releases were shit, but they were released pretty much for those kind of reasons. Mostly because I just wanted to invent things, and I sold them to a magic company. But since then, it's very much been a case of like, is this adding anything to the magic community? Is this different in any way?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, no. If it's not, why release it? You don't need another version of Collectors where I'm using a double undercut rather than a cover pass. Who needs that?
Mm-hmm.
It's fine, stick it in a magazine, but people don't like that. Magazines have sort of died out a bit anyway, but it's still like, nah, don't want to put it in a magazine. I can put it on Penguin Magic and make $5 per download. Rather than sticking
buy it, because there are people that are looking for the latest downloads all the time, and if it looks half decent, they'll buy it, and that's why it continues to be a problem. Because somebody might buy it, bring a trick out that's not very good, they'll do it as a download somewhere. People will spend $100, they'll make $100 on it, and they'll go, well, hang on, that was an easy $100. Let me do another one. Let me do another one. Let me do another one.
I mean, and oftentimes these are not people that rely on this for their jobs. So like $100, yes, sweet. If you're a student, you're like 14 or 15 or something, great. $100 is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money if you have to feed a family.
Yeah,
it doesn't go very far. I mean, it gives you some shopping done, but that's about it. And that's part of the problem as well. There's again, we're tying it back to that of like respecting the art form, what's come before, all of that kind of stuff, and just going, yeah, I can put out a release. I mean, I've had people coming into the shop of saying like, oh, you might know me. I put out a couple of things on Penguin. Like, mate, there are like 1,000 downloads a week on Penguin. I don't know who you are. But in their mind, it's like, I am someone now. I have released something. I have a product. People know me. No, they don't. They don't. but and again, like I have no sort of, I don't want to disrespect any of these people for trying. Very good, but they might need to educate themselves a bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. Man, Dan, this has been an incredible interview. Obviously, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and we've chatted over the years, but we've never really been sort of close. Yeah. And one thing that I've realized from this interview is I want to sit down more often with you and have a chat, because our views are very much in line. And it's great to, I could do this interview for another 5 hours. I don't think YouTube will be happy if I did.
No,
but I could do this interview for another 5 hours. But, you're definitely somebody who is, obviously so passionate about magic and obviously cares about the art form, and I think that's come across so clearly in this interview. It really has. And everything that you've said are serious, real problems that we need to find a solution for. And I applaud you for actually saying this stuff rather than just making the interview all about you. And it's like, hey, I can cook as well, by the way, don't you?
I'm not important in any way, shape, or form. I have opinions, but they're just opinions. I'm probably wrong on a lot of things, and people will tell me. But I know you're trying to round it off. It's just one thing that when you're saying I'm very passionate about magic, and which is true, and I love good magic. I hate bad magic, but there's always something good in even in the bad things. But and it's again just trying to be better. Again, my friend Shane Cobalt usually says that, like, do better magic. Do better magic. And I think that's important. I think it's important to try to be better. The Spanish people, this is not a magic word, it's called duende, which is an untranslatable word, which means like the feeling of awe and wonder when you're witnessing a piece of performance or magic or a song perhaps that really intensely moves you emotionally. Do we do that with magic? Not really. Do we have to? Probably not. But I mean, it'd be nice if we tried to.
Yeah.
I mean, watching, like I said before, like watching the Guardio, I think there's some duende there. There's something there that's really moving. I mean, most of my male friends, all adult male friends, have cried watching that show. I mean, the only times I've cried watching magic before is, but it's so bad, and this wasn't bad. So, but I think I think there's a nice word, duende, which is that indescribable feeling of like, this is so good and like amazing. That doesn't quite translate to English, but I think that's something to strive.
Yeah, we do need to spend more time trying to make it more of an art form. You know, I had a question on the channel a little while ago, and it was like, you know, magic's obviously very popular. Look at how many magicians have won AGT and done really well on BGT. Why do you think people don't take magic more seriously when it's obviously so popular?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it is a fair question. And people that spend many pages in books writing about this, from Creative Magic, Darren Brown, all of them, they've all written about, like, is magic art? And yeah, sometimes.
It can be. It has the
potential. It can be. Does it have to be? No. And it's fine. And I think that's the key thing as well. Like, as much as I say these things, as much as I am passionate about things, you can do whatever you like. It doesn't matter. If you enjoy it, fantastic. If you go out there and do bad magic, I'd rather you didn't. Is it going to affect me realistically? No. But I want everyone to just try to be better somehow. Yeah. And I think that's sort of where I want to sort of leave all of this. As much as I talk about making it into some beautiful, meaningful art or perfecting technique, just have fun with it. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying it, then who gives a shit if it's art or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that. Whew, that's it.
I've
got something out of my system. I haven't talked to people for a long time.
Oh, I think you've done a great job. The sales manager in my office, who I employ to be the sales manager, her name's Liz, and she's incredible. She spent 7 years as an entertainment manager on holiday parks. So she's seen some incredible entertainment. She's seen some terrible entertainment. And every time I'm in the office and I'm leaving to go to a gig, I'll leave to go for a gig. And she goes, remember, don't be shit.
Yeah. I think that sums it up. I mean, we could have cut the interview a bit shorter and just gone straight for that, but don't be shit.
Yeah, don't be shit. Yeah, absolutely.
But
you know what? This is Do Better Magic. This has been an incredible interview. Where can people connect with you? What's your social media that people connect?
I don't care about social media much. I'm on Facebook. Okay. That's it. I don't do Instagram, Twitter, or anything like that. I don't think my random thoughts of the day will mean anything to anybody. I am on Facebook. I'm very happy to chat to people all the time. And anyone who's ever in London, just hit me up and I'll happily go out, have some drinks for you, have some food. I love meeting people, but I don't really do social media. Don't have a website. I just do this.
Awesome. So reach out to you on Facebook. And if people want your advice, can they message you on Facebook? Can they if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, you know what, I'd like to connect with Dan more and speak a little bit more about this. Would it be okay for them to message?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. When I worked in Davenports, I would ignore all the friend requests because everyone who came into their shop thought I was their friend. I might be friendly, not necessarily your friend. So I have like hundreds of like friend requests that I haven't responded to yet. So if you're one of those people, I'm sorry. Just send me a message first, maybe. I look at the sort of message, like the other sort of folder on Facebook.
Yeah, the message requests.
Message requests. I don't like people just adding me because I don't know who you are. Tell me why you want to talk. Okay. I'm very, very happy to talk to everybody. It's like I said, it's my passion. This is what I miss from my days working in Davenport. So yeah, I'm here for anyone who wants to chat about anything. I'm super happy to do that. So.
Amazing. Dan, this has been an incredible interview. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. I feel like I finally made it in the magic world.
You got, but mate,
Either that or you are scraping the barrel. One of the two.
Well, but no, because here you are. After I finished on this interview, I'm going straight onto an interview with Matt Johnson. So, like, you know, I'm definitely not. So, you know, so
no, he's a bit better than me. So, okay, fine. That's fair enough.
You know, I've wanted you on the channel for a long time. I really have, and
it's been my absolute pleasure.
So thank you so much, Dan. And I want everyone who's watching this to leave a comment down below. Dan will hopefully read them, and
no,
he won't read them. He most definitely will not read any of the comments that you leave down below.
I don't no, I will read all of them, and I'll try to check in every so often, see if anyone wants to say anything. I'll reply back. So.
Amazing. And don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back again tomorrow with another 3 videos.
And press like.
And press like. Do the like and the follow and the subscription.
All of those things.
All those things, absolutely. And I will see you again. Dan, one more time, thank you very much.
No, thank you. See you later. Take care.